Good morning, sir. Okay, good morning, everybody. The time is 10 o'clock, and I'll call the June 13th, 2024 Planning Board meeting to order. We are joined by our Vice Chair Bailey.
Good morning.
We have Commissioner Washington.
Good morning.
Commissioner Dorner.
Hello.
And Commissioner Giraldo.
Good morning, everyone.
And I'm Chair Shapiro. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission of materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with the link provided in the email provided by the planning board office or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number that was provided in the email. And of course, anyone may tune in to watch the planning board meeting via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form, which you'll see referenced before you. And in addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our principal counsel, David Warner. Good morning, Mr. Warner. We have Jessica Jones, our planning board administrator, Rhonda Ford, our technical hearing writer, and James Hunt, our acting deputy planning director. And staff members Kenneth Flanagan and Ryan Cron are helping us with technology behind the scenes quite ably as always. We're going to, the order of cases will follow as described in the agenda. And we'll start with commissioner items, and I believe that our vice chair has an item for us.
And thank you so very much for this opportunity to talk about or speak about an amazing event coming up this weekend with our Park and Rec. I saw Wanda on, and Wanda already knows, and many of you already know, that this weekend we will be celebrating Juneteenth at Watkins Park. It is one of the outstanding programs presented by our Park and Recreational Program, filled with creativity, inspiration, and celebrating history and culture. So it's well attended. And it starts at, you can see it on the screen, our screen, yep. At 12 noon. And we have one of the largest attendance in the country. And that's one of the reasons our Park and Rec program, Wanda, is the outstanding recreational program in the country. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. And also the other program we had recently that Chair Shapiro and I attended, where we celebrated folk in the 90s and 100. And that too is another one of my one of the programs that I don't miss. Maybe because I'm so close to that age, but I don't miss that program. It also was a very outstanding program. You can tell that we really do wonderful programs in our Park and Recreational program. Our programs in Park and Recreation are very outstanding. And every now and then we just need to stop and thank the staff for the tremendous, amazing work that they do. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'll see some of you in the park on Saturday.
It's so wonderful. I certainly associate myself with those remarks and share all the feelings associated with that as well. So Vice Chair Bailey, thank you so much for those kind words and for informing the public as well. And that is a absolutely perfect segue to our first item on the agenda, which is a resolution in support of Juneteenth. And building off Vice Chair Bailey, let me just read a little bit that's going to be coming from the resolution that's going to be before us. Juneteenth, as we know, is commonly known as the country's second Independence Day. Here's my history lesson here. On June 19th, 1865, the Union Army of the United States arrived in Galveston, Texas, to pronounce that all enslaved people were free. And that was more than 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. In 2021, Juneteenth was designated both by the feds as well as our commission a holiday. And next week, our offices will be closed on Wednesday, June 19th, in observance of the holiday of the occasion. We encourage community celebration as well as time to gather with family to reflect on our country's past and to look toward a prosperous future for all. And as Ms. Bailey talked about, June 15th, we have the Parks and Rec annual Juneteenth celebration, and I could not have said it any better than Ms. Bailey. It's truly a wonderful, wonderful event, and I encourage everybody to participate. We've been hosting this festival since 2008, and we are proud to showcase all the great work of the commission in support of the people in the county, the history, the music, the dance, the activities for adults and children. Just a wonderful, wonderful event. So that is what I have for you. And if there's anything else that anyone wants to add, otherwise I would look for a motion to support the resolution.
So move.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Giraldo, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, and I share in the comments of both Vice Chair Bailey and the chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye and likewise associate myself with you, both your comments.
Commissioner Dorner.
But ditto. And I'll also mention to folks who haven't been to the African American Museum that's in downtown DC, right over by the Washington Monument. It's splendid. As you walk in, it's not obvious from the outside, but as you walk in, there's 3 levels down below the ground level. So it looks kind of small from the outside, but then there's 3 immense levels with lots of details and information. And if you haven't been, I would suggest going and starting at the very bottom, because you begin in the chronologically at the moment earliest on, and as you go up, you'll get more to kind of like modern times, and it's a really great museum to go and see lots and lots of details and cultural kind of aspects. So I would certainly encourage people to go there if you have the opportunity.
Thank you for that. And Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thanks, everybody. Next item on our agenda is the draft minutes from the June 6, 2024 meeting. I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes.
Second.
A motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. There is no discussion. I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, Mr. Chair.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. We have no legislative items this week, and we will move on to some Parks and Rec items. We have item 3C, Beltsville Community Center grant of sewer easement to WSSC. We have Mr. Sun, who will be giving a presentation on this, such as it is. I don't know if you have anything or just here to answer any questions. Mr. Sun.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Shapiro and fellow planning board members. For the record, my name is Paul Sun, Land Acquisition Specialist for the Department of Parks and Recreation. We're here today to request approval for the granting of a sewer easement to WSSC at our Beltsville Community Center. Next slide, please. Beltsville Community Center is located approximately a half-mile east of Cherry Hill Road. Next slide, please. The Little Paint Branch Trail runs westward from the community center over towards Route 1, westward down Cherry Hill Road, and connects to our Cherry Hill Park and Paint Branch Stream Valley Park to the south. Next slide, please. The trail was built in 2018. When we implemented the trail, we had to acquire easements and land to construct the trail. The adjacent owner worked with our department and granted or donated the land and associated easements and build the trail. And that was Mr. Neziana Investments. His property is located right next to the Beltsville Community Center. Next slide, please. Mr. Neziana received a letter of commendation from our former planning board chair. Next slide, please. Mr. Neziana saw the benefits of the trail and thought that it would improve the frontage along his property. And in 2023, a minor subdivision plat was approved for his property. His property, for some of you who may remember, was the former Lupin Nurseries, which was a real mess, and the subdivision will actually clean up that entire property. Next slide, please. So as part of his subdivision approval, there's a need to connect to sewer for the property, and the sewer line runs along the driveway to our community center, which is outlined in blue, as you can see. He's requesting a sewer easement of roughly 20 by 100 feet, sort of along the edge of our property, so that he can connect to the sewer. Department of Parks and Recreation staff finds no adverse impacts to our property for granting the sewer. And DPR staff recommends approval of this grant of easement to WSSC at no cost considerations. This concludes staff's presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sun. Questions for staff, commissioners? We have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Sun. Well done. And if there are no further questions, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the granting of a sewer easement to Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Sun. We have another Parks and Rec item. This is item 3D on our agenda, Westphalia Central Park, a grant of permanent access easement to Prince George's County to facilitate future bridge repair and maintenance. Mr. Sun, the floor is yours again.
Okay, I'm waiting on the PowerPoint. Just a second. Okay, good morning again, Chairman Shapiro. We're here today to grant permission for a permanent access easement at Westphalia Central Park. Next slide, please. For those of you unaware, Westphalia Central Park is one of our signature parks in the Westphalia Sector Plan and is located approximately half-mile northeast of the intersection of Suitland Parkway and Maryland Route 4, Pennsylvania Avenue. Next slide, please. The proposed alignment of Woodyard Road bifurcates our park, and it contains a 100-foot right-of-way that was dedicated to Prince George's County. The proposed design for Woodyard Road will require a bridge to span across Cabin Branch, as shown in the location in red. Next slide, please. Prince George's County Department of Public Works and Transportation has requested a permanent access easement on both sides of the existing Woodyard right-of-way to maintain, repair, and operate and inspect the future bridge. In order to gain access, they're proposing to use the current existing access road and areas around where the bridge will be constructed. Next slide, please. Total easement area requested is 31,267 square feet, or roughly 3/4 of an acre on either side of the right-of-way. Next slide. Here's an aerial map depicting the proposed easement, and there will be no cost considerations for this easement. Next slide. DPR staff recommends approval to grant this easement so the proposed Woodyard Road can be implemented. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Sun. Questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Sun, again. I would look for a motion to approve the easement.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the granting of a permanent access easement to Prince George's County to facilitate future bridge repair and maintenance.
Second.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo, I believe. I got that right?
Yeah.
You got it right.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Sun. Thank you for the
Thank
work today. We now move on to consent agenda items, of which there are a number. Is there anyone here who wishes to oppose the staff's recommendations on items for A, D, E, and F, or any board member who wishes to discuss any of these items? If not, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, after consideration of records of items 4A, 4D, 4E, and F, I move adoption of the staff findings and approval of these items on the consent agenda in accordance with the recommendation of staff.
Second.
Second.
We got a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Geraldo.
I vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Now we're on to our regular agenda items. We will start with item 5. This is an extension request for preliminary plan 4-21055 Terrapin House. Just to note, this preliminary plan subdivision was approved by the Planning Board on May 26, 2022, and is valid through June 16, 2024, and by letter dated April 24, 2024. The applicant, through their attorney, Mr. Tedesco, requested a one-year extension of this approval. We have Mr. Bartlett who gives staff presentation. I may have just stole his thunder. We have Mr. Tedesco who will answer any questions. We did have somebody who signed up to speak. I think that the person signed up to speak for another item instead of this item. Kathy Dixon, are you here and were you intending to speak on this extension request?
No, that's incorrect. I'm with the Prince George's Public Schools team for item 10.
Excellent. So we thought as much, but I just want to make sure. Thank you, Ms. Dixon. So with that, I'll turn to staff. Mr. Bartlett, take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I am Jason Bartlett with the subdivision section. Item number 5 on the agenda is an extension request for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21055 titled Terrapin House. This preliminary plan of subdivision was approved by the planning board on May 26, 2022, and is valid through June 16, 2024. The preliminary plan approved one parcel for the development of 175 multifamily dwelling units and 15,000 square feet of gross floor area of commercial use. By letter dated April 24, 2024, the applicant requested a one-year extension of the plan's approval. This is the applicant's first extension request. If this request is approved, the preliminary plan of subdivision will be valid through June 16 of 2025. Section 24-119D of the prior subdivision regulations authorizes the planning board to grant an extension to the normal expiration of a preliminary plan of subdivision when certain criteria are met. These criteria and their findings are listed in the staff memorandum. Staff find that all criteria has been met and recommend that the planning board grant a one-year extension for preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21055 pursuant to section 24-119D5A Romanet 1 through 5 of the prior subdivision regulations. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Much appreciated. Commissioners, any questions for staff before we turn to the applicants? Not, Mr. Tedesco, take it away. Floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. For the record, Matthew Tedesco, from the law firm of McNamee, Hosey and Greenbelt, on behalf of the owner and applicant. Very briefly, just want to thank Mr. Bartlett for his review. Just one point of clarification I just wanted to make for the board's edification. It's not really too germane to the request before you, but just for the record, the conceptual site plan 2-0002 that was approved for this property by the district council in June of 2021 actually rezoned a portion of the property that was previously in the R55 zone, which were lots 9 and 10. The purpose of that was to balance out the entire site into the NUI DDO zone. It was already in the DDO, but There were 2 lots, 9 and 10, that were also R55. Subsequently to the CSP, those were rezoned to MUI. So the entire balance of the property went to MUI in June of 2021. Why is that relevant? Because the MUI DDO and the sector plan for the US 1 corridor is what then triggered the need for the detailed site plan in this case, in addition to the preliminary plan. My letter dated April 24th goes through the timeline with respect to that detailed site plan, and really the understanding and agreements and the MOU that the applicant entered into with the city of College Park at the time of the CSP really framed the timeline for the detailed site plan, which we've gone into great detail in our letter. I won't repeat it here. We'll submit on the letter. But the detailed site plan, basically 17 months of the 24 months of the validity period was used to get through and go through that detailed site plan process. Not to say that that was any result from any staff review, planning board review, or applicant review. It's just there were things that were agreed to that had to be done before we could really pursue the detailed site plan in earnest. And so once all those things were done, the detailed site plan was pursued, has since been approved. We're in the process of certification, in the process of record plat, and hopefully soon permitting. But we are up against this validity period. So we have requested the 1-year extension. And with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, we thank Mr. Bartlett for his review, his recommendations, and we certainly support his recommendation and hope that the board approves this request for the extension this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? There are none. Again, there's nobody who signed up to speak on this approval request for 1-year extension. So with that, commissioners, turn to you. What is your pleasure in this item?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the analysis of staff and approve the 1-year extension for preliminary plan 4-21055.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye, Mr. Chair.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Tedesco, and thank you, Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you so much.
But don't go anywhere, Mr. Bartlett, because we have item 6 on our agenda. This is a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-23012, Renewal Christian Center. Majette Parker is representing the applicant. This is also a request for approval of a continuance to July 25, 2024. I will turn to you, Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, I'm Jason Bartlett with the subdivision section. Item number 6 on the agenda is the preliminary plan of subdivision for Renewal Christian Center 4-23012. The subject project proposes one parcel for 24,920 square feet of institutional development. Staff is requesting a continuance of this case to July 25, 2024. This continuance is necessary to satisfy the referral and coordination of reservation for the master plan right-of-way of US 301 Robert Crane Highway, which falls on the subject property. Coordination with the county and state agencies is required by section 24-139B of the prior Prince George's County subdivision regulations in effect prior to April 1, 2022, which is applicable to this review. If the continuance is granted, additional posting will not be required. The notices of public hearing signs for this application were posted on the subject site on May 14, 2024. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Commissioners, there's no questions for staff. I will turn to the representative of the applicant, Mr. Parker. Good to see you. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Pleasure to be here with you. For the record, Majette Parker, Law Office Majette S. Parker, PA in Camp Spring, Maryland. The applicant, Renewal Christian Center, is in full agreement with this continuance, and we're working together to coordinate all of these activities for the good of the county. Thank you very much, and we support this request for the continuance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? If not, there's no one else who wishes to speak on this question of the approval of a continuance. Turn to you all. What's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve staff's request to continue preliminary plan 4-23012 to planning board hearing date July 25, 2024.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo. If there's no discussion on the motion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Parker, and thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Move on to item 7 on our agenda, preliminary plan of subdivision 4-22050 Fairview. This is an evidentiary hearing, so if we have folks who are signed up to speak, I will swear them in at the appropriate time. We have Ms. Gupta who will give the staff presentation, and then again, Mr. Gibbs, who will be representing the applicant. And we will turn to Ms. Gupta. Take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Doing a quick sound check.
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Good morning again, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I'm Ridula Gupta with the subdivision section. Item number 7 on the agenda is a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-22050 titled Fairview. The subdivision proposes 65 lots and 5 parcels for 65 single-family attached dwelling units. This application is supported by an approved certificate of adequacy ADQ-2022-053. As a matter of housekeeping, the additional backup includes 1 exhibit received from the applicant prior to the Tuesday noon deadline and a memo received from the Maryland State Highway Administration on June 6, 2024, after the staff report had been published. Next slide. The 7.65 acre site is located within planning area 73 and council district 5. Next slide. More specifically, the site is located in the northeast quadrant of the intersection of the Capitol Beltway and the Martin Luther King Jr. Highway. Next slide. The subject property highlighted in red is located in the commercial, general, and office zone. This preliminary plan of subdivision, however, is reviewed accordance with these site's prior commercial shopping center zone. Next slide. The site map shows the site topography, which is delineated on the slide in pink. Next slide. This slide shows the master plan rights-of-way located in the vicinity of the site. Next slide. This is an aerial view of the site that shows that most of the property is currently wooded. Next slide. The townhouse lots, which are highlighted in yellow, are proposed to be front-loading and face 2 private streets, which are shaded in a lighter purple color. Primary access from the site is proposed at 1 location to Whitfield Chapel Road, as shown with arrows on the slide. This preliminary plan proposes dedication of additional width of right-of-way for public use along Whitfield Chapel Road. No additional right-of-way dedication is required along other roads. Next slide. This is a conceptual rendering of the proposed development. Next slide. This slide shows lots which are highlighted in yellow that require a variation from section 24-121A4 of the prior subdivision regulations. This variation request is detailed further on pages 29 to 31 in the staff report. Next slide. This application also includes a request from variation from section 24-122A requirement for public utility easements. And this is detailed further on pages 14 to 16 in the staff report. Next slide. So this and the next slide depict the site area that will be impacted by noise during the daytime and the nighttime hours. These slides also show the conceptual location of the required noise barriers. Next slide. And the next slide, please. This slide shows the location of specimen trees on the property, which are proposed to be removed. The woodland conservation requirement is proposed to be satisfied with on-site woodland preservation and afforestation and off-site conservation credits. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the additional backup included a letter from the applicant regarding the conditions recommended by staff. The applicant requests a revision to condition 2B, which clarifies the requirement for public utility easements, and of which staff is in agreement. No revisions to findings in the staff report are necessary. The applicant requests confirmation regarding condition 10, that certain requirements related to parcels to be conveyed to the homeowners association do not necessarily need to be completed prior to the approval of building permits. These requirements ensure that any land conveyed by the applicant to the HOA is free of deleterious effects or impacts such as waste matter or construction debris. Staff acknowledges that these areas may not be stabilized until after the first building permit has been issued for the property. The applicant also proposes deletion of condition 11A, which requires that a bicycle lane be provided along the site's frontage of Whitfield Chapel Road, in accordance with the recommendations of the 2009 approved countywide master plan for transportation. The applicant justifies not providing this bicycle lane, stating that there is insufficient right-of-way along Whitfield Chapel Road. Staff does not support the deletion of this master plan facility, since the applicant is proposing to dedicate additional right-of-way for a total of 40 feet of width from the center line, in keeping with the master plan's recommendation for this portion of the road as a 4-lane collector roadway. With this additional right-of-way dedication, Whitfield Chapel Road will have adequate right-of-way to support the master plan bicycle lane. The current language of the condition, however, acknowledges that the road operating agency may modify this requirement. The second exhibit is a memo from State Highway providing their review comments regarding the project. Staff has reviewed the letter and determined that it is not contrary to the staff's transportation analysis and findings. Next slide. In conclusion, based on the findings presented in the technical staff report, staff recommend that the planning board approve this preliminary plan of subdivision 4-22050, type 1 tree conservation plan TCP 1-075-04-03, variations from sections 24-121A4 and 24-122A, and variants from section 25-122B1G, subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report, with condition 2B as revised by the applicant's exhibit 1. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta. Commissioners, any questions for staff before we turn to the app?
Just a clarifying question, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gupta, you indicated that staff exhibit number 1, the letter from State Highway, was not contrary to our transportation staff's review. Does that need to be still be incorporated in the motion, or is it just being included as part of the record?
You're correct, Commissioner. It's just being included as part of the record.
Thank you very much. That's it for me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will turn to the applicant. Mr. Gibbs, take it away. Floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Shapiro, members of the Planning Board. Edward Gibbs, an attorney with offices in Largo. On behalf of the applicant in this case, DD Land Holdings. And DD Land Holdings is an entity created by Mr. William F. Chesley. He is the member and owner of that limited liability company, and of course has vast experience relative to land development and construction here in Prince George's County, and quite frankly in other jurisdictions as well. I think Mr. Chesley's out of town, but I believe he is called in. He was registered to speak. In addition, we also have Kim Morgan, our civil engineer with Land Tech, and Jackie Chandler, our transportation engineer with Traffic Concepts. They are both here. I appreciate Ms. Gupta's presentation this morning. I also appreciate working with her to bring the case to this point and to narrow the issues that we appear to have. The sole issue being the provision of a standalone dedicated bike lane along the Whitfield Chapel Road frontage. I do want to just say that this is a unique piece of property, though, bounded by 4 roadways, 2 of them major, being the Capitol Beltway and Martin Luther King Jr. Highway. The others being Whitfield Chapel Road on the east and to the north, Fairview Avenue. And I think that unique circumstance contributed mightily to the ultimate approval of a rezoning application in 2018, rezoning the property from the R80 zone to the CSC zone. And my client actually, even prior to my representation of him, had substantial citizen outreach in order to reach a consensus on how the property would be developed. Way back in the time when the property was zoned R80, there had been a preliminary subdivision plan approved. Once the property was zoned CSC, a retail commercial development concept was generated, and through meetings with the community, there was a concern raised about having commercial retail development occur at this location, notwithstanding the fact that the retail commercial designation had been placed on the property in 2018. So my client continued to work diligently with the Whitfield Gardens Civic Association and the Carsondale Civic Association. Numerous meetings have occurred through the years. I have personally been involved in at least 5 since I've been representing Mr. Chesley, the most recent of which occurred in May of this year. And then ultimately, my client worked closely with the citizens and with Council Chair Ivy, who sponsored a text amendment in 2021, CB 14 of 2021, which since at that time the new zoning had not been placed on the property, permitted townhomes in the CSC zone. There was a caveat which required that 3% of the units be accessible to persons with disabilities. And even though the property ultimately was rezoned to the CGO zone, with the adoption of the countywide map amendment, my client wanted to maintain the commitments that have been made and pursue the preliminary subdivision plan and ultimately the detailed site plan, which will be required, using the prior ordinance and in keeping with the requirements of the text amendment, CB 14 of 2021. So we will be providing units which are accessible to persons with disabilities, notwithstanding the fact that that would not be required under the CGO zone. So we are at one with staff with respect to everything except the bike lane. In a response to SDRC comments in my letter dated April 24 of 2024, this same comment was made by the Transportation Division at that time, and I responded not just based upon my knowledge, but based upon information provided to me by our transportation engineer, Jackie Chandler, and by our civil engineer, Kim Morgan, who worked jointly and indeed had conversations with DPI concerning this issue. Condition 11 has like 6 subparts. A pathway along Martin Luther King Jr. Highway, other pedestrian related uses. We've worked diligently with DPI to, we're going to repave Fairview Avenue. We're going to put new curb and gutter in. We're going to have 5-foot wide sidewalks down there. But in April of 2024, in response to SDRC comments, I advised, per conversations with my experts and DPI that even though we are dedicating the maximum right-of-way for Whitfield Chapel Road, which is 40 feet from the center line, when you consider the road improvements that we're making, including a dedicated left turn lane into the site, there simply is no right-of-way available for a dedicated bicycle lane. And to my knowledge, this was vetted with DPI. As a matter of fact, we proposed to them to put Sharrow markings in the pavement within the right-of-way to accommodate bicycle traffic, but not a dedicated bicycle lane because there simply is no right-of-way available for that. So I'm immensely curious as to why we're hearing for the first time today that staff thinks there is sufficient room for this dedicated bike lane. I would like to have my experts, Kim Morgan from Land Tech, and then Jackie Chandler from Traffic Concepts, give their factual information with regard to their analysis, which establishes in their view that there is no room for a bike lane within the right-of-way. And my concern about leaving this language in here, because when I talked to Ms. Gupta, when I filed my letter, I sent a copy directly to her and I invited her to call me. And she did yesterday. And she said, well, you're protected by the language unless otherwise designated by the operating authority in writing. And I said, well, that really doesn't protect me, because if I accept a condition that says provide a bicycle lane along our frontage, I might go to DPI and they may say, oh, that's great, dedicate more land from your property and there will be enough room. And obviously, we can't do this. We have a constrained site to begin with a limited density that's occurring. So that's our problem with the condition. We're not trying to get out of doing anything. We're doing everything that's being asked of us and more, but we can't agree to something that we can't do. So with that being said, I'd like to ask you to call Kim Morgan first and then Jackie Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Ms. Gupta, you want to respond to this now? You want to hear from Ms. Morgan and Ms. Chandler?
I just wanted to reiterate that our staff review is based on the information we received from DPI and DPWT. Staff received a memo from DPI. It's dated March 11th, and it is in the backup. And it's signed by Steve Snyder, and it's from Ray de Guzman. And it does say in the permitting state, the applicant shall provide a bicycle lane along Whitfield Chapel Road. So I'm not sure if they received different information from DPI, but staff analysis was based on the information we received from DPI. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta.
Yeah. And I think my witnesses will clarify that, Chair Shapiro.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we'll call Ms. Morgan first, and Mr. Chandler. Ms. Morgan, Ms. Chandler, you're both on the line.
Hi, this is Kim Morgan with Land Tech Corporation. We're the engineering firm that prepared the plans for this project.
All right, wait, before you go, Ms. Morgan and Ms. Chandler, I need to swear you both in. If you could raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, consider yourself both sworn in. Now, Ms. Morgan, go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away.
Okay, my name is Kim Morgan. I'm with the Land Tech Corporation. We're the engineering firm that we've actually been working on this project since 2003. But in 2018, when, as Ed Gibbs suggested, it was zoned commercial and we prepared a commercial plan. And at that time, we did prepare final construction plans for the Whitfield Chapel Road requirements. And our entrance is exactly the same location as during the 2018 commercial development. We're dedicating 40 feet from the center line, this is an ultimate 80-foot right-of-way. So we're dedicating the 40 feet. And in that 40 feet, we have the lanes that have been required by the traffic study. And in addition to that, we're providing a 5-foot sidewalk and at the end, street trees and street lights. And that takes us to the right-of-way that's required. and there is no room for a bike lane in addition to that. We would have to dedicate more land to do that. And so speaking with Ed, we talked about share the road with the bike. We could do that if that's required. But we would have to dedicate more land in order to provide the bike lane.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Chandler?
Good morning. My name is Jackie Chandler. I'm with Traffic Concepts. We are the traffic consultant for this project. Ms. Gupta referenced a March 11th letter from DPI requesting that a bike lane be installed. Based on that letter, we did request a meeting with DPI to discuss this issue as well as some other issues that were in that letter. We held a meeting on March the 28th with Mr. Guzman and other representatives. And we did discuss the fact that we could not fit a bike lane within the right-of-way that's proposed. They were agreeable to us looking at other options, such as what we call sharrows, which are share the road, as well as signs that say share the road. So they were agreeable to that in the meeting on March the 28th.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Ms. Gupta, hold on one second if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask for one further clarification from Ms. Chandler? During that meeting with DPI, first of all, could you identify who you met with? And then I would also like you to advise the planning board as to whether or not DPI took any exception to your representation. There was simply no room within the right-of-way to provide a dedicated bike lane.
Okay, that meeting that I referenced was on March the 28th. Mr. Guzman was in attendance. Marwan and Renee Lord Adabor were in attendance at that meeting. We discussed other issues besides the bike lane, but when we did discuss the bike lane, Renee spoke up to say he was okay with us marking it, understanding that we did not have the right of way available to provide an asphalt bike lane.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. And thanks again, Ms. Chandler. Commissioners, questions for the applicant? You want to hear from Ms. Gupta again before you have questions to the applicant?
I have one question, Mr. Chairman, and that is on, notwithstanding the frontage of the applicant's property, what is the state of bike lanes or sharrows on either side of the property? Meaning once you cross Maryland 704 and then perhaps once you cross on, I think it's Fairview Avenue. Are there dedicated bike lanes on either side?
My understanding is that there are not, but certainly perhaps my witnesses could respond to that, or in the alternative, Ms. Gupta.
Any more information on this, Ms. Chandler or Ms. Morgan?
I am currently looking at Google Earth to confirm.
The definitive source.
As I did not study the southern section, but no, there are no bike lanes on the southern section as well, below 704.
And are there any on the north side of Fairview Avenue on either side of Whitfield Chapel?
No, there are not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know Ms. Gupta wants to add something as well. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant before we hear from Ms. Gupta? No?
I have a question just for clarification. So the issue is that you can have a bike lane, but it would just have to be, the developer would have to put more land, dedicate more land. And if so, how much more land would they have to dedicate for the bike lane?
Mr. Gibbs?
We would have to dedicate more land, which is not legally required. And there is no vehicle to require dedication for extra land for a bike lane. As to how much it would be, I can't tell you. I don't know how wide the bike lane would have to be, what type of grading would have to be done. I just don't know those. I don't know the answers to those questions. Perhaps Ms. Morgan could respond to that.
This is Kim Morgan with Land Tech Corporation. Just off the top of my head, without looking at it and the topo, the existing topography that's there, the bike lanes are generally, Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, between 5 and 6 feet is generally what they request in width. And then we would possibly have to build a retaining wall along the property or provide, 10, 12 feet of additional dedication in order to provide that bike lane.
Why?
Okay. Commissioner
Why?
Geraldo Moore?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why. Why does it have to go to 10 or 12 feet?
Because the bike lane itself would be 5 or 6, and then if you're going to grade it so that it ties into the existing topography, you have to dedicate more area, or you can build a retaining wall just on the other side of the bike lane. But again, as I said, I would have to sit down and look at it to see what additional would actually be required.
Okay.
It would definitely be 6 feet in order just to get the bike lane in.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And I would also add, Commissioner, that, everything more, we have a plan that's been designed based upon dedicating 40 feet from the center line to provide the maximum right-of-way width for Whitfield Chapel Road shown on the master plan of transportation. Nothing more than that is shown. And when you ask for further dedication that's not legally supported, it also has a cascading effect on the balance of the property. Again, we have a constrained site, 7.65 acres, was zoned for commercial. We're falling back to a residential development in order to work with the community. And so that also has an impact on trying to provide additional trees and landscaping, and could even have an impact on the lotting pattern as it's shown in the preliminary plan along Whitfield Chapel Road. So it's not just dedicating 10 feet and putting in a retaining wall. Not that those aren't substantial things, but there's the impact that it has on the development site as well.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you.
Did you
Other questions?
get,
Yeah, Commissioner Dorner.
yeah, did you get like a letter or memo or anything from DPI in response to this? Because I mean, this seems like a fairly big difference in terms of like how the staff have presented and how you presented it. Even though it's like it's a bike lane, so it's not like the major part of your project. But did you get anything in writing from them saying that, hey, yeah, we're okay with the Shero versus the bike lane?
No, we did not. They did not offer anything in writing. We do have testimony under oath here this morning, but no, we didn't get. I mean, that meeting, if Commissioner, was wide ranging. If you look at the referral of March 11th from DPI, there are a lot of issues that they addressed, and subsequent to that March meeting, March 28th, I guess it was. We had other meetings, including a wide-ranging meeting with DPI concerning improvements to Fairview Avenue, because that area was in substantial need of upgrades. And we don't have, and we agreed to mill and overlay all of Fairview Avenue, put new curb and gutter in, new 5-foot sidewalks. And quite frankly, we have been trying since that meeting to get something in writing from DPI confirming that agreement, and we don't have it yet. We've asked many, many times. It's been very difficult to get things out of DPI, quite frankly.
Hi, this is Kim Morgan of Land Tech Corporation. Ed is absolutely correct, but on April 4th, 2024, I wrote a letter to DPI. It was a memo with the meeting minutes from our meeting from the 28th of March. And number 7 in that letter says the developer has agreed to provide full frontage improvements along Whitfield Chapel Road. It was discussed that there is not enough right-of-way for a dedicated bike lane. Renee Lord Ottavor suggested that in lieu of a bike lane, an alternative bicycle-related amenity might be explored. Based on that meeting minutes, we do have an email from Ray de Guzman that indicated that he does agree with those meeting minutes, and they are in the process now of preparing that waiver letter for official acceptance to us, and then that will give us approval of the site development concept plan. But this all got wrapped up in the site development concept plan process as well.
Great. I think that's helpful. Did you submit those meeting minutes? I don't recall seeing those, but I think that would be helpful backup information.
Yes, we can submit those.
Okay.
And make that part of the record. I know it's late for.
We're happy to submit those documents into the record. I was not aware that Ms. Morgan had them. Thank you, Ms. Morgan.
Yes.
Okay. Chair Shapiro, I think I'd like to hear from Gupta in terms of like if she had any interactions with DPI on this, and then what her feeling would be about potentially amending the condition, not striking it, but maybe amending, say, something like a bike lane or share along the site frontage. I think that would at least be consistent with what we heard today, and still make sure that we get a share in there, or a bike lane if DPI disagrees with what we've heard.
Yeah, I mean, we still have folks in the public to hear from too, so I don't want to sort of close anything down at this point. But I'm, based on the conversation, I'm certainly mindful that the applicant's team has testified under oath that this is the DPI position. But what's complicated for me is that we don't, we're still working with a letter that staff has that says that they're not comfortable with that. We're not bound by staff's position on this by any stretch, and we do have testimony under oath with a slightly different version of this. So I lean in that direction, but I'm curious, and perhaps even legal could weigh in a bit to see if how much latitude they think we have on a condition like this. Mr. Warner, you have any thoughts, reactions to this?
Thank you, Chairman. David Warner, Principal Counsel. Well, I think it is important just to step back and make sure we are identifying the authority under which this condition's being required, and that is master plan conformance. And the staff report shows that the master plan of transportation, expressly recommends a bike lane along Whitfield Road. So that's what the applicant is required to conform to. Now, if it's impossible, then that is a reason why the planning board, may make an exception to that. But you are starting from the premise that they need to conform to this requirement in the master plan of transportation. Mr. Gibbs is correct when he says, well, the master plan of transportation only requires a dedication of a certain width of roadway. It doesn't say that, we can ask for additional dedication of property. But, you have evidence in your record of a letter from DPI that says that the bike lane is what they're requiring. And then you have some testimony from the applicant that suggests maybe DPI thinks an alternative is okay. I didn't hear any evidence that staff was part of those meetings or that this April 4th letter is in your record or stuff like that. But so you have to look at the evidence, but I think it's important to know that we're starting off from a requirement that they need to conform to MPOT. and put a bike lane on the roadway. And then if it's not achievable, well, then that's a reason to maybe adjust the condition.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. And I do want to hear from Ms. Gupta and perhaps Ms. Connor, but Ms. Gupta, let's turn to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple of clarifications. So I want to emphasize that the condition as it is right now does allow for those modifications or revisions from a bike lane to a shared lane. It does allow for that flexibility as it's written now. But deletion of that condition altogether takes away it altogether. You cannot, you're taking that requirement out altogether if you delete that completely. And we are not asking, or we did not even evaluate any additional dedication of land. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we are not in favor of deleting provisions for bicycle lanes or provision for bike lanes in any form in its entirety.
Ms. Gupta, you may get to this quicker than I can with my paperwork here. Is it possible for you or somebody to share that condition so we can actually look at that language?
It's in the staff report, Kenny, if you can, or it's page 35.
Mm-hmm. Look at our efficient staff. This is great. Thank you. Of course, my old eyes can't see this at all, but okay.
And then the applicant has proffered an amendment to that condition.
Yeah, they've proffered to delete it entirely. 11A.
Right.
You can zoom in, Kenny.
There we go.
Thanks.
And Ms. Gupta, your position is the second part of that condition is that unless modified by the operating agency with written correspondence. And so if the applicant has already, based on their testimony, received that, then it shouldn't be a problem for them to document it as such. Is that correct? Am I understanding your position?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And so to your point, Commissioner, if DPI has already said they're flexible and they could support sharrows rather than a bike lane, dedicated bike lane, then there shouldn't be an issue at all. Okay, that's helpful. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so Mr. Gibbs, the floor is still yours. I don't know if you have more to present from your side. We'll turn to the
other than to say we do not accept willingly the language as it reads in that condition for the reasons that I explained in my initial presentation. Now, perhaps if you added the words after Whitfield Chapel Road, if you added if the same can be accommodated within the right-of-way to be dedicated by the applicant.
Which I believe is the intention of staff anyhow, isn't it, Ms. Gupta?
Absolutely. Yes, Chair. We are not evaluating or asking for any further dedication of land. As Mr. Gibbs pointed out, we can.
I think that is the intention. I'm curious where my colleagues are, but I don't have any issues clarifying staff's intention because that's where you are anyhow. So to add that language feels like no harm, no foul.
I mean, that's a compromise that we could go along with, which just clarifies things. I apologize, but I've been down the road too many times when things seem clear and end up not being clear later.
Ms. Connor, Ms. Gupta, Mr. Hun, any concerns with that? And again, your report is your report, but you're advising us around what it would be like for us to amend the condition with that language.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. This is Sherry Connor for the record with the subdivision section. I think what we've heard is the applicant has indicated the ability to do sharrows, and so we would not object to including clarification in the condition, maybe indicating the sharrows in particular. to say unless modified by the operating agency, including modification to Sharrows with written correspondence.
What about the additional language of saying that there's no expectation that there would be any additional dedication of right of way?
Yep, we're fine with that as well.
Okay,
And
good.
Mr. Chairman, if staff could just work on that language so it can be read into the record for all to hear, that would be great. I think we have other people to hear from.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Washington. All right, Mr. Gibbs, anything else from you before we turn to the public?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And I appreciate the board's indulgence to entertain this issue. Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Gupta, before we hear from the public too, anything else from you or other staff members?
No, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So with that, we'll go to our speakers list. We have Ms. Lula. Is it Beatty or Beatty? Ms. Beatty? Ms. Beatty? You're still on mute.
It's Beatty.
Ms. Beatty. All right, we have Ms. Lula Beatty with the Carsondale Civic Association. If you could introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. How much time do you need to speak, by the way?
I only need a minute or two.
Okay. All right, Ms. Beatty. Thank you so much. Introduce yourself, and the floor is yours. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Beatty. I need to swear you in. I apologize. I forgot. So if you could raise your right hand. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Consider yourself under oath and take it away. The floor is yours.
Okay. My name is Lula Beatty. I'm president of the Carsondale Civic Association, and our community is adjacent to Fairview. We have been working with Mr. Gibbs and Mr. Chesley over the years. We were initially opposed to the initial development that changed the zoning from residential to commercial. We were very concerned about that, and are more accepting of the return to a residential development at that site. Even though we have been assured that it meets all the traffic and safety conditions, this is a very small, if you've ever been on that space of road, it is an awkward or constrained, I think is the word used to describe that piece of property. But it is, there's not much distance between Martin Luther King and then Fairview, the proposed community that will be developed there, and the sight lines. We are very concerned about safety. We are accepting of the residential development to have townhomes, but it will increase our community a great deal. The records, I guess, indicate that there are not as many accidents as we think that we see, but we're very concerned about the safety there. And we see more of the near accidents than the ones that get recorded. And so with that increase in volume, our only concern now that we want to be on record for is the safety and the increased congestion that is brought to a very confined area of Whitfield Chapel Road. Between the other side of that is Route 50. So there's an overpass for Route 50. So between that and Martin Luther King, we are really concerned about the safety, particularly in terms of we have a lot of senior citizens and we have a lot of children in this area now. And I think even more will be brought in by this development. But we are not, but we just wanted to make sure that our concerns about the safety is on record and what that traffic will be like, because there's not much, the turning space between one red light and to get in and out of Martin Luther King is already difficult for most of us who live in this area.
Thank you, Ms. Beatty. I really appreciate you. Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking the time and your patience with us as we work through lots of these issues. And thank you for your leadership in the community, as always. When we hear from Mr. Gibbs again in his close, we certainly want him to address these issues, or his team address some of the issues around the public safety concerns that you have, so that we can have that for the record as well. And thank you, Ms. Beatty. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Beatty? Thank you very much, ma'am. Much appreciated. We have no one else who has signed up to speak on this. Ms. Gupta, anything else that we need to hear from staff on this, and perhaps Ms. Washington's direction around specific language? Are you all ready for that? Or you need a few more minutes?
Staff does have a draft. We just wanted to know if the applicant's team is in agreement, but I can read it out if that's
Sure.
okay.
And
and
it
Mr.
says
Gibbs
that
can
Mr. Gibbs
hear it.
actually has to build the bike lane himself, right?
I'm sure he'll be happy. He'll be happy to build the sharrows, paint the sharrows.
Painting. Yes.
Yeah. So
ahead.
I can read
You
it
read it
out.
for the record. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yes, Mr. Chair. So the revised 11A language will read: a bicycle lane or sharrows along the site's frontage of Whitfield Chapel Road to be accommodated within the right-of-way as shown on the preliminary plan of subdivision, unless modified by the operating agency with written correspondence. So I'll repeat that: a bicycle lane or sharrows along the site's frontage of Whitfield Chapel Road to be accommodated within the right-of-way as shown on the preliminary plan of subdivision, unless modified by the operating agency with written correspondence.
That feels like it captures what we talked about.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree, and I would thank Ms. Connor and Ms. Gupta for crafting that language. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ms. Gupta, and thank you, Ms. Connor. So let us turn to the applicant for the final word, any rebuttal and close. And if you could address Ms. Beatty's issues around the uniqueness of the property and safety as you have approached this, perhaps you or any of the other members of your team could speak to this issue very directly for the record.
Surely, Mr. Chairman. So we have had conversations with Ms. Beatty and with Whitfield Gardens representatives as well. Once again, most recently, I think that last meeting we had was around May 22nd of last month. They have asked questions during the meetings about how traffic is going to work. We explained to them that we prepared a traffic impact study, which was reviewed by the Transportation Division of Park and Planning Commission and also reviewed by the State Highway Administration, that at the level of service at the intersection in question is, I think, A and B in morning and evening peak hours at this time. And that the traffic to be generated by this, I think it's 65 townhomes at this point, does not appreciably adversely impact that level of service in any way. Also, there had been questions raised about the turning movement into the community from Whitfield Chapel Road. And again, we assured them that that meets all site distance standards and just distance requirements as they are articulated. The county really doesn't have that distance standard, but the State Highway Administration does have a standard for where an intersecting driveway into a community has to be from the intersection with a state road, and that's 150 feet. And our intersection or our driveway off of Whitfield Chapel Road into the community is about 305 feet, a little bit more than double what the state standard is. So that's the information that we gave to the community. I could have Ms. Chandler actually give you the final level of service, which appears in her report, if that would be helpful. Ms. Chandler, could you just quickly add that?
Absolutely. So under future conditions with the build out of all background developments and growth and the subject project. The intersection of 704 at Whitfield Chapel Road will operate at a B level of service during the morning peak and a B level of service during the evening peak. The proposed site access onto Whitfield Chapel will also operate at B and A levels of service.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler.
You're welcome.
So that's pretty much top of the line in terms of level of service. But I appreciate Ms. Beatty's concerns. And again, we've attempted to assure the community at every meeting we've had that we're doing everything absolutely that we can and that we meet all required governmental standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Appreciate it. Any final words for you, Mr. Gibbs, as you close?
No, thanks. I just want to thank the planning board again for being indulgent in sort of hashing through this one condition that we had. And, my client's really excited about being able to bring a community here that will be an asset to the county and is an alternative development that's more greatly embraced by the community, let's say. So thank you very much, and thank you for your staff. And once again, thanks Ms. Connor and Ms. Gupta for crafting language that sort of got us out of that spider web that we were in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. So with that, we have no one else signed up to speak. We've heard from the applicant who has the final word. I will close this public hearing and turn it back to us commissioners for any deliberation. And if there's no deliberation, action, but let's start any deliberation, any further thoughts, reactions, comments from us as we decide how to proceed. Good to go? Okay, if there's nothing else, then I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve preliminary plan 4-22050, TCP 1-075-04-03, variance to section 25, variance to
Hold on
Am
one
I
second.
getting
Make sure we can hear you, but I want to make sure everyone's muted. Okay, keep going.
Okay, and variance to section 25-122B1G and variation from section 24-121A4 and variation from section 24-122A, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report, and condition 2B as modified by applicant exhibit number 1, and condition 11A as modified and as read into the record by staff.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Commissioner Giraldo. Under discussion, let me just say I appreciate staff and the applicant working through this. A little sausage being made on camera sometimes is necessary, and I appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness, professionalism, and flexibility. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Beatty. And thank you, Ms. Gupta, and thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you all very much, and have a nice week.
We are now moving on to item 8 on our agenda. This is a CSP Conterra 07003-01, Conterra Town Center East. This also, Mr. Hatcher is representing the applicant. Mr. Huang will begin the staff presentation. This is also a preliminary, evidentiary hearing. So if there's anyone who's going to be speaking, I'll swear them in at the appropriate time. And we will start with Mr. Huang for the staff presentation. Take it away, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of Planning Board. For the record, my name is Emery Huang with Urban Design Section. Item number 8 is a conceptual site plan, CSP-07003-01 for Conterra Town Center East. This CSP request to amend CSP-07003 to add a 5.6 acre lot for development of Block 01 and to revise the uses they were previously approved for Block 08 in order to add office space to a portion of Block 08. For the record, step 1 to make an administrative correction on the cover sheet and page 4 of the staff report, revising CSP-07003 to -01 to CSP-07003, since the subject CSP is CSP-07003-01, and E is to amend CSP-07003. Based on the findings presented in the technical step report, Urban Design Staff recommended that the Planning Board approves conceptual site plan CSP-07003-01 and the Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TCP1-005-08-02, subject to the recommended condition of approval within the technical step report, with one correction outlined in this presentation. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huang. Appreciate it. If there's no questions for staff, I will turn to the applicant, Mr. Hatcher. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning Board, for the record, my name is Chris Hatcher with CL Hatcher, here on behalf of the applicant, which is Quintera Associates LLC, Quintera Core Ventures LLC, Quintera Environs LLC, for application CSP 07003-01 and associated TCP 1-00502. I'd like to thank staff and the community stakeholders which have reached out and emailed through the course of this application. As staff has indicated, and as we've shared with anybody who's reached out, the scope of this application is relatively limited, just to increase the number of acres, but not necessarily the amount of development for the overall Quintera Town Center, just to make these 5.6 acres consistent with the overall mixed-use town center plan that the board approved many years ago. We have reviewed the staff report, and associated conditions are in full support as drafted with the technical corrections. And here with me today, but did not sign up to speak, is Mr. Gould. He just wanted to be here and show his support and his appreciation to the planning board and staff as well. With that, we respectfully request that the planning board adopt the findings of fact and inclusions of law contained in the staff report and approve CSP 07003-01 and the associated TCP1. We're here to respond to any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hatcher. I appreciate that. Mr. Gould, good to see you. Glad you're there. We have no one else who signed up to speak on this item. Commissioners, unless you have any questions for the applicant or for staff, and I don't see any.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner Joyner.
Mr. Hatcher, in the conceptual site plan, I very much appreciate how you guys have put it on like a grid fashion, because a lot of the subdivisions that we see around here are just terribly designed in terms of like street networks and stuff, and they're just hard to get through, and it's almost like they're just disconnected and like stand on their own, and they don't really connect into the local areas. The one thing that I usually don't like seeing is the cul-de-sacs, because those don't really connect, and you've got a couple of them on there. So as you go forward with that, if you can figure out, it may not be possible, but if you can figure out a way to actually connect those in, I think that would be really good, just to not have streets leading to like nowhere and not being like fully connected. It's just good urbanism kind of like tactics. But otherwise, I definitely appreciate the mix of things. It looks really nice, how you've kind of designed the mix of uses within there. And just the layout itself looks quite nice for the block of land. Like you've done a good job at like slicing it up and really thinking through on it. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words.
Other questions, comments, thoughts, reactions?
I just want to say for the record that I love cul-de-sacs. I happen to live on one. So that's the beauty of diversity in our beloved county, Commissioner Dorner.
Yeah, I didn't want to say
I
anything, but
love that it goes to nowhere, which means that if you're coming that way, you got to be coming to see me. So
right. I
I
gotta say,
anticipated the response.
right, exactly. Yeah. And I have to say, I live in a cul-de-sac too, and the way it works is that all my neighbors actually cut through our yard to get to the neighboring cul-de-sac. And that's the way that works.
We appreciate all the kind words in all directions.
So if there's no further, there's no one else who's speaking on this, I will close this hearing. And commissioners, if there's no deliberation, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff to include the technical corrections as read into the record by staff and approve CSP-07003-01 and TCP1-005-08-02, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report.
Okay.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo.
Yes.
Discussion on the motion. No discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Cul-de-sac. Dorner, I'm sorry.
So I'll clarify. I used to live on a cul-de-sac when I was much smaller, so I have. There's a really great urbanism book that was written probably 25 years ago or something. I think it's called Suburban Nation, that talks about suburban design. And ever since I read that, I was like, why did we ever do cul-de-sacs? Like, these are terrible inventions. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I'm looking for my copy of Suburban Nation behind me. It's right there. And you vote aye, I assume.
Yes, I voted
aye. Okay. And Vice Chair Bailey votes aye. I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Hatcher. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Good to see you.
Thank you all, commissioners. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wong, as well. Next, we have item 9 on our agenda. This is SDP 2304. Is that right? Yes, Saddle Ridge. Mr. Tedesco is representing the applicant. Ms. Kosak will be giving the staff presentation. This is an evidentiary hearing. I believe we have a number of folks who signed up to speak in opposition, as well as support, as well as staff are part of the team in support. I will swear folks in as we get to them, since this is an evidentiary hearing, and we'll start with the staff presentation. Ms. Kosak, take it away.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Jill Kosak with the Urban Design section. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, and I actually experience you as a little bit soft.
Mm-hmm. It is a little.
Is that any better?
Much better.
Much better? Okay, sorry. Item number 9 on the agenda is Specific Design Plan SDP 2304 for Saddle Ridge, which proposes only infrastructure improvements, including public streets, water, sewer, storm drain utilities, and stormwater management facilities. The infrastructure is to support a future residential community as allowed by the District Council approved A-10060, which rezoned the property. An applicant may submit a specific design plan for infrastructure only in order to proceed with limited site improvements. The proposed lots and residential architecture will have to be approved under separate applications that will have to come before the planning board prior to the platting of the property or issuance of building permits. Future grading allowed as a result of this SDP will be subject to regulatory controls imposed and enforced by the county. The applicant submitted a variance request to remove 33 specimen trees with staff's analysis on pages 11 through 14 of the report. Staff supports the removal of 22 specimen trees, with the remaining 11 specimen trees to be evaluated with the preliminary plan of subdivision. The applicant also submitted a request for 21 primary management area impacts. Staff's analysis of this request is on page 14 of the report. Staff supports 20 of these impacts, with the remaining one to be evaluated at the preliminary plan of subdivision stage. As a matter of housekeeping, the applicant has provided a revised findings and conditions memorandum titled Applicant's Exhibit 1 Staff has reviewed these revisions and are in agreement with the proposed changes. Staff did receive 2 letters of opposition from the Brandywine Southern Region Neighborhood Coalition and a group identifying themselves as abutting property owners and affected residents that are in the backup. The items of concern were regarding various impacts, specifically public facilities, traffic, air, and water pollution. However, issues raised are not relevant to this SDP, which is for infrastructure only. Traffic and public facilities adequacy will be evaluated at the preliminary plan of subdivision stage. Development aspects of the residential subdivision, again, such as architecture and landscaping, will be evaluated at the full specific design plan phase. Additionally, a referral was received from DPI dated June 7th and is in the additional backup. Their comments will be addressed with the preliminary plan of subdivision and in the final technical permit plans. And the final resolution will reflect the receipt of that memo. In conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Board adopt the findings of the report and approve specific design plan SDP 2304, Type 2 Tree Conservation Plan TCP 2-011-2024, and a variance from section 25-122B1G for the removal of 22 specimen trees, subject to the conditions found in the staff report as revised by applicant's Exhibit 1. And this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kosek. Ms. Kosek, I want you to just spend one more minute at some level, maybe repeating what you said, but about what is before us, that these are infrastructure improvements only. And the reason why is because I know we have a number of folks who signed up to speak, and I want to make sure that the folks who are speaking to the actual case that is before us. So if you could sort of pound that a bit for us again, and perhaps Mr. Warner, you could step in as well, that might be helpful. But Ms. Kosek, turn back to you.
Yes, a specific design plan for infrastructure is permitted in the zoning ordinance in order for the applicant to proceed with limited site improvements. In this case, what is proposed are public streets, water, sewer, and storm drain utilities, and stormwater management facilities. Again, this is an optional application that the applicant has chosen to file in order to proceed with these limited site improvements. And the full build out of the community with architecture and lots and recreational facilities, landscaping, et cetera, will be the subject of future specific design plans that would have to come before the board for approval. So again, it's just limited to these infrastructure type improvements at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Kosek. And Mr. Warner, I'd like to hear from you too on this, but I just want to say that means for me is regardless of what happens today, the community will have ample opportunity to have its voice heard in advance of any approval or denial of the real meat of this project. And I just want to make sure that we're clear around that this is relatively limited in scope what's before us. Mr. Warner, anything you want to bring to us on that or add to that as we proceed?
Thank you, Chair. David Warner, Principal Counsel. No, Jill adequately, I think, identified what this particular application covers, which we tend to kind of say colloquially as the stuff that's not above the ground, right? And the subsequent approvals will deal more with the things that are going to be above the ground, the buildings and the other improvements. That's one way to kind of look at it. And the idea behind a SDP for infrastructure is the development process being a very long one. The council has provided a method whereby some of that development activity can begin before the applicant has perhaps finished the design of the above ground improvements, whether it be buildings, townhouses, whatever it might be. And so I think Jill encapsulated that in her referral. So I think we're good to go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Warner. Commissioners, any questions for staff or council?
I have one question, Mr. Chair, just for clarification. I understand it's for infrastructure and they'll be putting streets and the like in. Well, does that mean, Ms. Kozak, that any, with a dog park that would come under, when it goes for the SDP?
Correct. The future SDPs would provide all the details relative to recreational facilities and other amenities on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Unless they want to build a dog road, but I don't know if
that would be good.
Possible. Right, all right. Any other questions for staff? Ms. Kosak, Mr. Warner? If not, we'll turn to the applicant, Mr. Tedesco. Take it away. You can introduce yourself, your team, and if anyone else but you wants to be speaking from your team, we'll swear them in, but turn it to you.
Yes, good. Still morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the planning board. For the record, Matthew Tedesco, the law firm of McNamee Hosey, here on behalf of the applicants, D.R. Horton Incorporated. My client, again, is the applicant in this application. I do not represent the owner. However, my client does have a purchase and sales agreement and is acting in pursuant to that, as it has on a number of previous applications related to this project. With me this morning, we have Mr. Matt Mudderman from D.R. Horton, from Rogers Consulting, which is our land planning, civil engineering, and environmental planning group. We have Matthew Lakin, who's our expert land planner, Christine Gillette, who's our expert landscape architect, Charlie Howe, our expert civil engineer, Rob Swam, our environmental consultant, Steve Allison, our expert arborist and environmental consultant, and Mr. Mike Lenhart from Lenhart Traffic and Consulting. Although not with us, also part of our team is the members of the GS Proctor and Associates team who have been actively working with us as well as with the community on this project and others in the area. So I just want to publicly thank them for their efforts on this application. Certainly want to thank Ms. Kozak, your environmental planning staff, your transportation planning staff, and other staff members in urban design and subdivision section with respect to its review of this application and its preceding applications and ultimately future applications. But always great working with staff and bringing these very important projects to you all. This one, similar to the one last week that you heard, is related to a project that has a very long history, which I'll go into in a little bit greater detail just to refresh your memory, because I know sometimes with all these cases that you all hear, it's important to sometimes reflect a little bit on how we got to where we are. As you may recall, this property in particular has a very long history of surface mining, sand and gravel operations that actually date back to the 1960s. And that is outlined in detail in your staff report. I won't go through the specific dates, but dating back to the 60s, 70s, and into the 90s, this property was a mining site. From the initiation of this project, from the point in time in which our client, D.R. Horton Incorporated, commenced on this process, and including our consulting team, that again date back before even we did the basic plan, the rezoning, which was A-10060, which this board recommended approval on in July of 2021, almost 3 years ago now. The zoning hearing examiner recommended approval of that rezoning back in May of 2022. And ultimately the district council approved that rezoning in October of 2022. Our vision, our client's vision, the team's vision and goal was to create the best possible land plan while preserving and enhancing the property's unique environmental features. And those features consist of the Birch Branch and its associated tributaries, thereby creating a very unique and special, well-planned and well-designed community. There is no doubt, as supported by the staff report and all reviewing agencies, that the prior CDP that was previously approved last year, that was in October of 2023, as well as this next iteration of the specific design plan for infrastructure only, furthers advances the vision and goals and satisfies all of the required findings of approval, which are very well articulated in your staff report and also analyzed in great detail in our statement of justification, which we would further incorporate and adopt as further testimony here today. This application, again, limited in scope, nevertheless, the project as a whole, as the planning board has come to expect and anticipate from this applicant and from this design team in particular, results in and produces a substantial, resilient community in a village-like setting that takes advantage of the natural environment while also improving upon those features. Although this is a specific design plan for infrastructure as articulated by Ms. Kozak and Mr. Warner, i.e. being limited in scope, by providing a well-designed, amenity-rich, environmentally sensitive, comprehensively planned community that will offer a mix of products at various sizes and price points. Ultimately, we believe this community will directly respond to the housing crisis and implement the county's housing opportunity for all comprehensive housing strategy, while also implementing the goals and policies of Plan 2035 and the Subregion 5 Master Plan. The ultimate creation of smaller neighborhoods physically connected to larger community by a series of trails and walks creates a village-like setting while also creating a sense of place with much needed housing in close proximity to one of the county's 26 local centers, being the Brandywine Local Community Center. Indeed, the Subregion 5 Master Plan specifically states and recommends that much of the future residential development in this subregion, and in Brandywine in particular, will be in large master plan communities, particularly in the north and west of the subregion. The master plan specifically references Saddle Ridge as one of those properties. I want to turn to this SDP in particular, as Ms. Kozak indicated, this SDP is for infrastructure only, meaning what's before you for approval or hopeful approval is grading, proposed streets, water and sewer utilities, storm drain utilities, and stormwater management facilities. We still must file and prepare a preliminary plan of subdivision. That must be reviewed and analyzed by your staff and ultimately approved by you all, along with a certificate of adequacy. And ultimately an SDP, as Ms. Kozak indicated, for the actual development. That SDP at that time will include everything that's not included in this SDP, which means the architecture of the homes, the landscaping, the lighting, the recreational amenities, that will include a clubhouse, as well as other amenities and dog park facilities. All those details will be at a future specific design plan. Transportation adequacy and other public facility adequacy testing will occur at the time of preliminary plan, not today. Pursuant to section 27-527C of the zoning ordinance, only those regulations, submittal requirements, development standards, and site design guidelines that are applicable to an infrastructure SDP shall be considered. This application before you and all of the supporting documents submitted in its support satisfy the requirements of 27-527 as well as 27-528B, which is articulated in your staff report. Simply, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, all findings are met. All applicable conditions of approval have been analyzed. All referring agencies support this application and recommend approval. Turning to the applicant's efforts and in response to some of the letters that the citizens have provided, I do want to make clear that notwithstanding some of the contentions made in those letters, we very much value the citizens' feedback and input and very much enjoy working with the residents in the community, and particularly those that have signed up here today. We have a very lengthy history with some we're still getting to know, but we very much consider them part of the project, notwithstanding they have concerns about the project, which we certainly understand and one would anticipate. The Brandywine community, as you all know, is changing and has changed. From the time of my childhood growing up in the area, it's changed significantly. And from the time that many of these residents have either owned or families have owned property, it's changed significantly. That's been purposeful. It's been purposeful to implement the general plan. It's been purposeful to implement the Subregion 5 Master Plan. That being said, I recognize, and the applicant recognizes, that change is hard. Change is difficult, but change is coming. That being said, there are very specific rules and guidelines that we must all follow, notwithstanding those planned recommendations and those changes to established Brandywine as one of the 26 local centers in the county. We must have transportation adequacy tested, public facilities tested, and that will be done. It's just not done at this particular stage. Our efforts with the community date back before the rezoning. We first had community outreach back in June of 2021. That was still very much in the thralls of COVID. We sent out more than 70 mailings to have virtual meetings at that time for the zoning map amendment. In April of 2023, we met with Mr. Taylor personally at the Rogers Consulting office to review the CDP at that time on behalf of himself and his family and his mother, who are also property owners in the area. In September of 2023, we had another outreach meeting for the CDP prior to the planning board hearing. We had members, you all may recall, of the community attend that CDP hearing. Some of their concerns may be raised again today. In December of 2023, we had a meeting at the Union Bethel Church with all those, I believe, who are here today, but also there were many in attendance, including the coalition, as well as the members of the BTB. In January of 2024, we had a meeting with an adjoining property owner along Flora Park Road, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. We met at their house and informed them of details regarding the project. In March of 2024, we had a follow-up meeting at the Union Bethel Church with representatives who are here today and representatives of the coalition and BTB. Those meetings, as we've promised in all of them, are ongoing. As Mr. Proctor and I have indicated to this community, we will continue to meet and meet as often and as many times as we are welcomed to meet and provide as much information as we possibly can provide. Some of the information we provide may not be agreed with, and we understand that and we respect it. We try to inform through our experts and through the process, as well as your staff tries to inform the community as best that we can. But the reality is that this property has gone through a rezoning to implement the master plan, to implement the general plan, and as well as a comprehensive design plan to further implement those goals and policies. This development ultimately, although more limited in scope here today regarding the infrastructure STP, but ultimately as a whole, and you'll probably hear me say this at the time of the preliminary plan and certainly at the time of the specific design plan for the overall development, it is not out of character of the area. In fact, when the rezoning was approved, both the planning board, the zoning hearing examiner, and the district council all approved the rezoning with a finding that all of the requirements of section 27-195 were met. Those included master plan and general plan conformance, which I've highlighted a number of times this morning. At that time, the transportation adequacy was looked at. Notwithstanding that, we will be retested at the time of preliminary plan. Other public facilities at that time were also deemed adequate. Again, notwithstanding, those will be further analyzed with the upcoming and forthcoming preliminary plan of subdivision. The environmental relationships were determined to reflect compatibility between the proposed land use type and the surrounding areas. Again, all recommended by staff, recommended by you, recommended by the zoning hearing examiner, and ultimately approved by the district council. With the recently approved comprehensive design plan, findings were made by this board and affirmed by the district council that this project and development, all of the purpose of the zone are met with this project. Section 27-511, all development standards are met, 27-513D. Compatibility with existing land uses was determined. The plan results in development with a better environment than could be achieved under other regulations was determined. Staging of development will not be an unreasonable burden on available public facilities. The plan demonstrated, the comprehensive design plan demonstrated preservation and/or restoration of regulated environmental features in a natural state to the fullest extent possible. All those findings have previously been made, notwithstanding the fact that, as you all know, with the preliminary plan and with the specific design plan, the greater detail of the project will further be analyzed and required findings be made at that time. With the utmost respect to the members of the community that are here, some of which we know very, very well, and we do consider them partners, notwithstanding agreeing to disagree on certain aspects of the project. Respectfully, all of the points raised in the letters that are before you in your backup either lack factual support, have already been addressed with the basic plan or the CDP, will be further addressed with upcoming preliminary plans and SDPs and the ADQs, or are just not relevant to the application before you, which is a limited scoped infrastructure SDP. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we had one exhibit that Ms. Kozak referenced in her presentation that related to fairly minor clarifications related to recommended findings and conditions. They are more or less consistent with amendments made and adopted by the board in the case from last week, which is Dobson Ridge, but they seek to just provide clarification to the recommended findings and conditions. And as Ms. Kozak indicated, staff is in agreement with applicant's Exhibit 1. We do have the assembled team with us to respond to any questions that the board may have, and we certainly welcome the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to respond after the citizens have had a chance to be heard. And we would submit at this time and reserve any prior comments or any subsequent comments, excuse me, until there may be questions and or responses to the community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we thank you for your indulgence. We thank you for your time. It's a very important project, and we stand ready to respond further as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Tusko. Appreciate it. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant before we hear from the public? Don't see any. Okay. In terms of the managing the time of this, want to make sure that the parties in opposition have roughly the same amount of time as the applicant has. The applicant took about 15 minutes. I see 5 members in the party of opposition. You can allocate your time as you see fit if you want to change it up a bit, but otherwise we'll assume it's 3 minutes per person. Let me just read through to see who we have here. Matt Muddyman.
Representative D.R. Horton, the applicant, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I thought that was an error. I just want to make sure. So then we have Kamita Gray. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Ms. Gray. Mark Calhoun, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Calhoun. Carlene Powell.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Oh, Mr. Calhoun, I see you there. I apologize for that. And Rodney Taylor. Mr. Taylor? Do I hear you, Mr. Taylor? I can't tell. Ms. Powell or Mr. Calhoun, do you know if Mr. Taylor is there on the line? You talked to him beforehand, or staff, do we know?
I do not. I don't know. Kamita,
Okay. We'll see as it plays along. So for Ms. Gray, Mr. Calhoun, Ms. Powell, and Mr. Taylor, if you're there, if you could raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the your testimony will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, consider yourself under oath. Again, I see 4 of you who are signed up to speak, if we have Mr. Taylor. So unless you all want to organize your time differently, you'll have up to 4 minutes each to speak, okay? And you don't have to use all that time, obviously, but that's the time that we have allotted for you. So I'll go in the order that I have listed here. We'll start with Ms. Gray, the BTB Coalition. And you, Ms. Gray, you don't have to bring your camera on, but we don't see you just in case that we did hear you.
Yes, I do apologize. My Mac graphic display does not have a camera.
Oh, yeah, no worries at all. We can hear you fine. So we'll put a clock up here, 4 minutes on the clock, and take it away. The floor is yours. Ms. Gray, I do want to say, as I would with all of you, I'm certainly going to provide some latitude, some flexibility with you all around your testimony. But to be clear, this is a limited scope SDP related to infrastructure. So I'm going to ask you to be mindful of that, and issues around transportation adequacy, issues around broader design issues or amenities and things like that are not pertinent to this case before us. They're just not. Again, we can provide a little bit of latitude. You're happy to have you here and advocating for what you believe, but I'm going to be not totally strict, but a little strict if you're veering too much into issues, topics that are off from what is before us, which is, as Mr. Warner very thoughtfully said, it's all the stuff that's below the ground rather than above the ground. That's what's before us, okay? So with that, I will start with you, Ms. Gray, and if you could introduce yourself for the record, the floor is yours.
I do have one question before we start. Your site describes the STP as including landscaping plans, tree conservation plans, and recreational facility plans. Is that not true today?
Let me ask staff to address that specific. Appreciate you bringing that up, and let me ask staff to address that specifically.
Can you restate the question one more time?
Ms. Gray, restate the question, please.
In parking planning's detailed description of what a STP includes, it says detailed landscaping plans, tree conservation plans, recreational facility plans, and exterior buildings evaluation.
Okay, yes, that is what a typical specific design plan does encompass. The specific design plan for infrastructure is a optional application type that is limited to infrastructure only, that the applicant can apply for prior to doing the typical specific design plan, which does include the full landscaping and buildings and things like that. So what you're describing as a typical one, however, there is the ability to do an infrastructure only, which is what this case before the board is today.
So to be clear, Ms. Gray, most of what you just described is actually not before us, only the infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And again, take it away. The floor is yours. If you could introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Kamita Gray, lifelong resident of Brandywine. On behalf of the Brandywine TV Southern Region Neighborhood Coalition, as the administrative chair of the ECCB, a place-based member organization dedicated to encouraging smart and sustainable development in Brandywine and Southern Maryland. We do work for the greater good of the community to ensure that Brandywine and the surrounding area receives its fair share of benefits without shouldering an unfair share of its costs and immediate enviros for which we are disproportionately impacted by adverse land use approvals while preventing development of future harmful activities. I do want to say the applicant did meet with the abutting property owners, but not with the BT Coalition or its members. Therefore, we are submitting this synopsis or testimony for the record as it relates to SDP 2304 Saddle Creek proceedings and providing our adverse suppositions. Testimony submitted is based on evidences and the considered humble opinion of our community members and our membership. An appropriate, adequate public facility policy. We ask that adequacy should be met with substantial and immediate impact concurrently, not in unpredicted future, having no budget or plans. As far as landscape conservation, the plan demonstrates that the regulated environmental features are preserved in minimal areas when this has been mature forested trees for over 7 decades. Also want to duly note the 172 acres on the Flora Park roadside have never been mined. As far as the applicants mentioned in his justification that Saddle Ridge specifically identifying the Brandywine area text as prime such for the master plan subdivision as very close. However, 5 miles is a lot of area to cover when there are improper public facilities to make appropriate necessary connections, specifically as it relates to recreation and community trails throughout, as we associate with Columbia, Maryland, having such connectivity. Having been esteemed evaluation of what we would consider for the Brandywine area neighborhoods. The DTR staff in this review believes that the dedication of 11 acres proposed on Floral Park Road will contribute toward meeting the community land for usable active recreation in the Brandywine community. That 11 acres proposed is not tangible and has been in the plans since 2007. Without proper infrastructure in public schools, students, teachers face consequences that go far beyond their physical as considered and should be treated as human rights issues. This is a 72% Black community as referenced. Minor discriminatory practices that we lack appropriate public facilities, and it goes against the very fabric of what our Constitution provides as citizen right and the duty of care that our government agencies are to protect and serve them. A determination must be made that the public will adequately be served by the appropriate facilities now and not in a probable, more likely than not outlook of assumptions that are discriminatory, having causation in the desperate impacts and overburdens on the Brandywine community. We do respect Mr. Tesco's comments in looking forward and working together. We do know that there are compromises on both sides, but we expect to at least have an appropriate seat at the table. Having presented the synopsis, all testimony from our written comments, therefore request that our full written testimony document in support of this testimony be added to the record that will be submitted today by email. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bray. Much appreciated. We now will hear from Mr. Calhoun, Mark Calhoun. If you can introduce yourself for the record, we'll put 4 minutes up for you as well, and introduce yourself and take it away.
How you doing? My name is Mark Calhoun. I'm sitting at 641 Floral Park Road, Brandywine, Maryland, 20613. I'm sitting in the middle of this project. Okay. I'm coming in today with the concerns of the development of how close this project is going to be to the borders of my house and everything that's going to be going on in the ground facilities. I have a water well. I've been using the water well officially for the last couple of years at the house. We've been using it the entire time for the last 40 years. I want to make sure whatever they're doing in the ground doesn't mess up the water table and continues to, well, basically not disturb my ability to use my water well, and that these property lines and the right away next to my home isn't encroached on, and that these also that I have a sewage facility, basically a septic facility and a drain field. So I don't even make sure that whatever they're doing into the ground close to my house doesn't disturb my living that we've been enjoying for all these years. So also want to make sure that I have some type of understanding of where these lines are when it comes to these easements for the electrical lines or whatever it is that was written into the deeds, whatever properties that they were received from some family members of mine when they got the property from them. My main concern is, since we want to keep it just on what this is today, is that the water tables and that the work that they're going to be doing close to my house doesn't affect anything that would basically doesn't affect our living. And that's what I'm here for. And I would like to have some further plans. I didn't see anything specific in what I was reading. I'll go back over it. I've tried to go through some of it today and some of it yesterday when I first got a chance to look at it and see whatever else I have laid out to explain what it is that they're going to be doing around my home. And basically at what time and what these the effects that could be, because right now I really don't have a good understanding of exactly how much work. And since you've gone from like 400 houses to 1,000, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot more destruction or whatever has to take to, and just to hold those number of houses, what you have to put into the ground to deal with that. Because that's a lot more housing, which means you have to do a lot more to the ground to deal with those houses, as far as putting in wires and putting in pipes. So it's going to be a lot more than what it was. A little clarification on all that and these easements. That's what I'm here for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun. I appreciate the questions and certainly appropriate questions and and concerns, and I'm sure Mr. Tedesco will address some of that in his rebuttal. The staff may have some comments on that as well, Mr. Calhoun, so thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have Carlene Powell.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yes, good afternoon. I am Carlene Powell, a lifelong resident of Brandywine, Maryland. I hear an echo. Are you hearing it?
Too. Yeah, we hear it too.
Okay. All right. There have been many.
Ms. Powell, is there any chance you have two devices on, like a phone and a computer?
Let's be sure. It should not be. Wait a minute. I can cut it off.
Now we can't hear you either. You.
Okay. Oh,
that's good.
Alrighty.
That's good. That's good. We can hear you fine.
All right. Thank you. As I said, I am Carlene Powell. I don't know what the echo is, but okay. A lifelong resident of Brandywine, Maryland. There have been many housing development projects in Brandywine with no adequate or improved infrastructure. And Brandywine has changed, but again, infrastructure is much needed. I live at the intersection of Branch Avenue and Moores Road in Brandywine, Maryland. Residents at Moores Road, East Side and West Side are greatly affected with additional traffic as a result of housing development entering onto 301 Branch Avenue, traveling northbound and southbound. And to travel anywhere, for us to travel anywhere, we must enter the Branch Avenue at the Branch Avenue intersection. It is a daily task and safety issue to enter the highway to travel either way, northbound or southbound, at any given time. Nearly 10 years or more ago, there were a meeting with community residents in Brandywine and Clinton who shared at a meeting with the Maryland Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration, that Branch Avenue could not handle the traffic. Now, that was more than 10 years or so ago. Some of the residents have met on Zoom with representatives from the MDOT and SHA, with the state senator addressing a list of concerns resulting in aggressive drivers, accidents, fatal and serious injury, intersection challenges, motorists riding shoulder daily, drag racing. All of this is happening at the intersection of Moores Road due to the lack of infrastructure before, after, or anywhere around there. At this time, I'm going to read a quote that was written in an email to fall of 2023 from a representative from the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration. And it reads as follows, quote, to provide further content to the construction date of Maryland 5 in this area from just south of Brandywine Road to just north of Anshore Drive, the original southbound lane of Maryland 5 was constructed in 1956. And the northbound was constructed in 1969. There has not been any expansion or capacity movements of Maryland 5 in this area since 1969. There have been many operational improvements since that time, such as auxiliary lanes with left and right turning movement, but no roadway expansion, unquote. And I can speak to that about 1969. I can tell you, I know the roads, with my eyes closed. The road out here where I live, Branch Avenue, has been the same since I was in high school. Even though there was driving before and after that, we have a difficult time getting out on the highway. And a lot of the residents have been almost in accident, have been deadly accidents. We need that infrastructure before we can move forward with any other further house development. Thank you for your time. And in closing, I am in support of the BTB Coalition testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Much appreciated. Mr. Taylor, glad you're able to get online. We see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. If you could formally introduce yourself for the record, and we'll put 4 minutes up on the clock, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Rodney Taylor here. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my mom, who resides at 6201 Floral Park Road in Brandywine, several other of the seniors that live on that same street, the abutting properties to this proposed development. And let me say, I'll start by saying we've had meetings with the developer, with Mr. Proctor, with our community, and some good meetings, and trying to work through some challenges that we see. But I would also say that speaking with the seniors, they're very concerned that even as we talk about this phase of the project, just the project in general, the infrastructure is a major issue right now in all the building that's going on. As you know, a development has already been built across the street from them. And currently my mom is having difficulty with water underground. Her yard is like a sponge now. We think that's coming from the water coming from across the street. There's just so many issues. The schools, I mean, it's just the growth of the buildings that's going on to have these seniors very concerned. And they really feel like, and I explained this, Mr. Proctor, and we've been talking, I will say, that they feel like they're not getting anything out of this other than taxes are going to go up and they're all on fixed incomes. So I just have a major concern with the seniors that we are now adding more houses to Floral Park Road. It's a single lane road going up and down. I know this is going to come somewhere in this process where they'll look at the traffic study and the infrastructure. I've been to several meetings. I hear this all the time. But at this point in time, I just need to hear more before I feel comfortable with what we're saying, that this project is something we want to see on Floral Park Road, and that from my mother as well. And she wanted to make sure I say that. So I'm saying that along with some of the seniors right there abutting the property of this development. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing your voice to this, and thank you for doing what you're told as a son as well.
Thank you.
All right. We don't have anyone else who signed up to speak on this. I will turn back to the applicant for any rebuttal and then close. Mr. Tedesco, you've heard some specific concerns, some of which actually are pertinent to this infrastructure issue. We're not expecting you to address the ones that aren't pertinent, but if you could address the ones that are specific to the infrastructure, it will be helpful for us in the rebuttal, and then you have the close as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank certainly all of the citizens, Ms. Gray, Mr. Calhoun, Ms. Powell, Mr. Taylor, and on behalf of Mr. Taylor, Mrs. Taylor. I do, just for housekeeping purposes, just to cover everyone's bases, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Mr. Taylor was on or received the oath. I just to belt and suspenders, make sure his testimony was sworn for his benefit and the benefit of the board.
I appreciate you flagging that. Mr. Taylor, were you sworn in?
Yes, I was sworn in. I was on. Okay. I was listening, and I did raise my right hand. I was.
All right, thank you. Thanks for checking, Mr. Tedesco.
Yeah, the only reason I did is because Mr. Taylor wasn't there originally, so I just want to make sure the record was perfectly clear that he did swear and affirm. So that's great. But no, I think to start kind of in reverse order, if I may, with Mr. Taylor, I want to thank Mr. Taylor for his acknowledgement of the efforts of both, myself, the applicant, and Mr. Proctor and his team with regarding the outreach. And this kind of dovetails into Mr. Calhoun's testimony, which certainly I think any neighbor adjacent to any development project, regardless of size, is certainly concerned of those components associated with adverse impacts associated with just, if anything else, the construction alone. And so I do want to make sure that Mr. Calhoun and Mr. and Mrs. Taylor are aware, and all the residents along Floral Park are aware of, the safeguards and the protections that the county and the state regulations impose with respect to any type of land development. And those, I don't need to go through a litany of what those are, but the permitting is not just with park and planning and or park and planning permit review section. We have agencies, both state and federal, as well as local, that review and actually permit all components of any particular development project. We're not there yet in that process. However, all of those regulations, local, state, and federal, must be adhered to ensure there are no adverse impacts with respect to adjoining properties, whether that be stormwater, water runoff, any impacts to existing septic or sewer systems and or water and well systems. I know Mr. Taylor's mentioned before, and he mentioned it here publicly with respect to, you know, what do we get out of this? What does the community get out of this, et cetera? That's always a tough question to answer because the impacts associated with any development project go far beyond that particular project, both from an economic standpoint to the county, to addressing housing issues for the county as well as the region. Certainly financial impacts associated with impact fees, permitting fees, surcharge fees. This project alone, those figures will be in the millions. So those are actual benefiting, contributing factors to the local economy as well as to the community. Moreover, as Mr. Taylor knows, we have been working very closely with him as well as some of the other neighbors and looking into and spending applicants' monies on consulting fees, looking into the ability and opportunities and the cost effectiveness of potentially providing sewer connections to some of the existing residents that are currently on septic. Whether that will be something that can ultimately be facilitated, we don't know yet. We're full disclosure struggling with some of that because of the grade and topo and just how things flow. But we have spent a considerable amount of time in requests made by the community adjacent property owners to look into those things, which we have and will continue to do, and look forward to continuing to work with Mr. Taylor and his neighbors in that regard. To kind of conclude on Mr. Calhoun's comments, notwithstanding the answer that there are a number of permits that must be acquired in order to facilitate any development. Even if the board approves this today, which we hope they do, that doesn't mean we have permits in hand and we get to go. There's still a lot of regulatory review that must occur. However, we did, and I think I've said this publicly on a number of times because Mr. Calhoun was very much involved in the rezoning. He attended the planning board hearing, the zoning hearing examiner hearing, as well as the district council hearing. There was concerns about property lines at that point, acreages and things of that sort. We've provided Mr. Calhoun on 5 different occasions surveys of his property as it relates to this property. I think we've publicly offered to meet with Mr. Calhoun. I will again publicly offer to meet with Mr. Calhoun. We're happy to come to his residence. We're happy to have him at any one of our offices or actually on the property to go through actually what the specific grading plans look like, the buffers, the landscaping. When we get to the point of we can actually show those in greater detail, but as far as as much detail as we have right now, we're happy to share and show. We certainly do not want to cause any impacts, whether perceived or otherwise, to Mr. Calhoun or his property. And we don't anticipate and don't believe that we will be. And I think just knowledge is power and key, and we want to share as much of that as we can, but we have to be given the opportunity to sit down and meet. Having dialogue through quasi-judicial evidentiary hearings is not the way to do it. So I would just, again, implore and encourage Mr. Calhoun to please allow us the opportunity to come and meet. Regarding Ms. Powell's testimony, and Ms. Powell and I know each other, and we've worked together for many years, and I certainly, as a former educator and a son of somebody who was in the school system of Prince George's County, I certainly can applaud Ms. Powell for her commitment to her community and commitment to making sure that things are done appropriately. We have a agreement to disagree with respect to some testimony regarding the infrastructure in the overall Brandywine community, Maryland 5 and US 301. I'm not going to go into great detail about that. We did that back in October of 2023, less than a year ago, on the CDP with similar testimony regarding improvements or the testimony of the belief of lack thereof on 301 and 5. I would further just by reference adopt our responses back on October 19, 2023 in reference to that. We went through at that time, Mr. Chairman, you may recall 5 or 6 different projects that have actually made improvements to that transportation network in the Brandywine area that were not just road club payments, but either payments that were actually used for improvements or actual improvements that were made as part of a developer participation agreement in lieu of making road club payments. And at the time of CDP, and I'm sure you'll hear me at the time of preliminary plan, In addition to our frontage improvements along Accokeek Road, which will be substantial, and Flora Park Road, this project is obligated to contribute to the Brandywine Road Club. That'll be a 7-figure number. But as we have done recently with other projects in Brandywine, to include Calm Retreat and Timothy Branch, we are trying to initiate either letter agreements or developer participation agreements to actually implement MPOT improvements in lieu of paying the road club, so that actual improvements get made instead of just paying into a club that monies are collected and then over time get implemented. It's been successful on a handful of recent projects in the Brandywine area. Calm Retreat, just to the south of here, which is just off the screen of this slide to the south, is actually putting in a third, Mike Lenhart's here, he can correct me, but a third through lane on more than a larger portion than its frontage along 301. The shopping center put in a third or fourth through lane northbound 301. Timothy Branch, obviously, both through private and public funding through the road club and developer funding, constructed the spine road through that project. Stevens Crossing to the north will do the same. So we intend to follow that roadmap, no pun intended, with respect to how do we start not just providing road club fees, although that's the requirement for adequacy. Is there an opportunity to actually make other improvements along the network? So those will be explored in greater detail at the time of preliminary plan. And finally, with Ms. Gray and her comment, the only thing that I would offer, just for the record, and Ms. Gray and I know each other for many decades, and I want to thank her for her involvement on behalf of her community and her role in that capacity. But I just want the record to be clear. The testimony today was we had not met with BTB. I have emailed, and we've gotten emails from BTB half a dozen times over the last 3 months. In every one of those emails, we've offered to meet. Ms. Gray attended the December 21st and March 14th meetings as the administrative chair, as she referenced her title as the BTB. She was there. Other members of BTB were in both of those meetings. Ms. Gray has personally met with Mr. Proctor in his office. So I just, in fairness to the applicant and in my role as preservation of the record, it's inconsistent with fact to say that we have not or are not meeting with BTB. That's just factually not correct. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we don't have anything further to add in rebuttal other than to say we do understand the community's concerns. We look forward to the continued dialogue. I welcome additional dialogue, but I'm not going to just show up on someone's doorstep unannounced or uninvited. So I would just welcome the opportunity to continue to have this dialogue and continue to provide information in the hopes that we can try to obviate these types of conversations in a quasi-judicial public setting. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for the board's indulgence. Thank you to the community and thank you to my team, although I don't think we need to hear from them, for being here, and we're happy to answer any questions.
You're muted, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Tedesco. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or any final questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, it's to us for any deliberation. I'm sorry.
I do have a question before you close the record, if I may.
Ms. Gray, I'm sorry, I've closed the hearing and the applicant has the last word. Okay. Thank you all the same. So commissioners, we're under deliberation. Anything that you want to react to, thoughts, comments, and if there's no deliberation, then I would look for a motion, but let's pause for a second to see if there's any thoughts or comments or reactions from anybody. Okay, the only thing I would say is...
The only thought is...
Ms. Bailey.
Oh, we're both talking. Just wanted to thank the citizens for coming. Mr. Taylor, Ms. Powell, Ms. Gray, and Mr. Calhoun. We always appreciate citizens coming before us and sharing their opinion, their thoughts, and their concerns. and we also always take them into consideration. So I just want to acknowledge their presence and thank them for coming and sharing with us today.
Thank you. Well said. I certainly associate myself with those remarks, Madam Vice Chair. The only thing I would add in addition is that this is a more limited scope. I actually appreciate the comments from folks in the public to work to keep it to what is before us, which is a more limited scope infrastructure improvements SDP in general. So that was helpful. I appreciate that. With that, commissioners, if there's no further discussion, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, also would like to thank the citizens for coming out and sharing their perspective as well as their testimony. And with that, I would like to move that we adopt the findings of staff to include the updated finding as detailed in applicant exhibit number 1 and approve SDP-2304, TCP2-011-2024, and variance to section 25-122B1G, along with the conditions and consideration as outlined in staff's report, and the conditions and consideration as further modified by applicant exhibit number 1.
Second. I would
We got a
also
motion by
like,
Commissioner Washington, a second by Commissioner Giraldo. Discussion?
I would just like to thank the citizens and the residents for coming out to speak. It's always helpful for the board to get that perspective. I'm familiar with the area and I know the concerns, and I would just encourage the residents to continue to work with Mr. Tedesco in meetings outside of prior to coming here to try to resolve any issues that they may have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I certainly associate myself with those remarks, and for all of you who spoke, I appreciate you taking the time. We're quite attentive to your concerns, and we would encourage you to stay active. Any further discussion? If not, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
But I
vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thanks, everybody. Much appreciated. Folks, we have one more item on our agenda. It may take a little bit of time. I'm going to suggest that we take a quick break. So the time is now 12:27. Let's break until 12:35. So we'll start up again at 12:35. We'll take up item 10 on our agenda.
thank you.
Thank you.
We have Ms. Osei, who's going to give a staff presentation for us. I think that's all that we have. We may have other folks who signed up to speak. It's not even clear to me based on my list here. Well, anyhow, we'll move it along. So let's start with the staff presentation, and then we'll take it from there.
Good afternoon.
Parker, so that's what's giving me pause.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Osei, go ahead, take it away.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the board. I'm Christine Osei, Countywide Planning Section. Item 11 is the proposed Robert Frost K-8 school by the Prince George's County Public School. The project was accepted on April 5th, 2024, and scheduled for planning board hearing on May 30th. However, the applicant submitted a waiver letter on May 28th, extending the review beyond the 60-day to today. Staff met with the applicant on June 12, 2024, to discuss options for addressing several traffic concerns outlined in the staff report, with written comments received from Public Works and DPI. The applicant provided staff with an updated initial traffic study submitted to staff on April 5th when the project was accepted. Unfortunately, we were not able to accept that information provided for presentation to the planning board today because the requirements of the planning board deadlines for new information were not met. However, the applicant has been informed that they can submit written response to the board following the mandatory report guidelines 30 days after the hearing today just discussing how they will be attempting to address some of the concerns that have been raised. I will talk about the background briefly and then run into the project. The proposed school is one of 8 school replacement projects proposed in the second phase of the Prince George's County Public Schools Blueprint School Program. The first phase of the program was announced in October 2019, and the first 6 schools were identified, all of which had previously been reviewed by the Planning Board as mandatory referral applications. The existing Frost School is approximately 42,268 square foot building, which was constructed in 1968. It has approximately 266 students. The new school, which is 4 stories, 89,371 square foot, K-8 school, is designed to house 2,000 students by consolidating other 2 schools, Charles Carroll Middle School, which has 906 students, Carroll Elementary School, Carlton Elementary School, with 587 students. Mr. Chairman, I have a slide that I would like your permission to introduce for circulation purposely, which is will replace slide number 10. Just for clarification, I wanted to acknowledge that to you before I get to that presentation. It illustrates better the issues that are at hand for this presentation, but that's okay.
Please.
Thank you. Okay, next slide. The area is located in planning area 69, Council District 3. Next slide. The site of vicinity map shows the outline of the project area with the existing school building located south of portion of the site, which will be demolished. Next slide. The zoning is residential single family 65, and the surrounding neighborhood is also in the same zone, except the northern piece of the property, which is an open space act zone. Next slide. The right-of-way, Good Luck Road, which is shown in green, is a collector roadway, and the yellow piece is a Capitol Beltway. Next slide. The area view shows the site again outlined in red, with the existing building showing the footprint, as well as will be demolished. Next slide. The site features, there are no wetlands and no streams. Next slide. This is the existing condition of the existing Frost Elementary School, some of the buildings that will also be demolished to replace for the school replacement. Next slide. Also showing existing conditions of the existing school today. Next slide. This is the site plan that illustrates the entire site with the old building gone, with a white rectangular 2 buildings connecting to be where the new building will be located. And the green showing landscape, which I will discuss in the next slide. And part of the yellowish 2 outlines show the outdoor classrooms again, which I will discuss them in the next slides coming forward. Next slide. This is the circulation plan, Mr. Chairman, that I would like to show the new image that can house. I could pass this and get to that one later as we get into the issues of transportation. So Ken already has it here now, so I can just walk through that. This is more illustrative, shows exactly the concerns that we have for this site and the layout and the school population that is designed and the traffic that will be able to come into the school, peak hours in the morning and in the evening. You can see the first part is the bus loop that is shown at the top, which is south of Good Luck Road. We'll bring buses into the school in the morning and in the evening. There will be 7 buses parking area within that loop, each one of the peak areas. The parking lot to the south side of the loop also show an access point to the bigger parking lot, which is also bringing in traffic in the morning to that area. Other access to the area are shown on the 85th Avenue, which is one of the concerns that's raised by Public Works and DPI. So this is a slide that the discussion will be focused on, and DPI and Public Works will be able to highlight their concerns as well as they raised in the staff report. Page 14 and 16 of the staff report actually illustrate the comments that came from both agencies that allow us to filter those into the recommendations that we have. So Ken, you can go back to the presentation. Thank you. Yeah, okay, we've already discussed this. The next one. This is because the school is part elementary and middle school. This is the type of playgrounds that will be in the school for the different grades. Next slide. We have the landscape plan, which I mentioned earlier. The greenery showing exactly what the landscape will be along the parking lots, the playgrounds, the surrounding the school, the bus loop area, and the greenery on the east side of the site. Next slide. This is the sample plantings that will be part of the landscape, which are natives, and the more enduring and more resilience to the weather in the area. Next slide. Sample outdoor classrooms. This is what I got from the applicant, show exactly what some of the outdoor teaching areas will be for the different grades in the school. Next slide. This is a kind of a summary of what I was able to pull together for you to see. The school is 2027 will be when it will be completed. The applicant can expand on that when they get to be able to answer questions. The next slide. The consolidation of the two schools that I mentioned, the Carrollton Elementary and the New Carrollton, that are two that will be consolidated into the new school. The applicant did not provide any information what the other two existing schools that will be part of Frost, what those buildings will be used for. Next slide. These are some of the site features as a new school being built. Of course, I mentioned the school will have 2,000 students. The bus loop is one of the key features that really brings attention on Good Luck Road and other areas, amenities that are provided on the site as listed here. Parking, 223 parking. ADA is met with 9 spaces and also vehicle charging stations and bicycle areas for bikers. Next slide. This is a rendering of the new building, which is part brick and metal. It shows what the new building frontage will look like. Next slide. This is also a section of that new building. Interior renderings of the new building as well. Sustainability features. The applicant indicates in their submission information to us that they are aiming to meet LEED Silver minimum designation. And these are the support elements that they think they can be able to bring into the project to meet that designation. Next slide. Traffic concerns, as I noted earlier, from the two agencies, Public Works and DPAC. Page 14 and 16 of the staff report actually just details each one of them and what they are. And so this is what really brings the concern from those agencies, which are the implementing agencies that this applicant will be able to go to for permitting. And so our staff is highlighting them just to provide the board with what the issues that we have seen in our review process. And I believe that those agencies are participating in this hearing and will be able to answer questions from the planning board on some of what concerns that have been raised and how their work with the applicant is actually taking shape. When I acknowledged at the beginning that we met with the applicant on the 12th, that was part of the conversation. What the intent, how the applicant is responding through addressing some of the concerns that have been raised. Unfortunately, we couldn't be able to get that presentation to you because it did not meet the deadline requirements set by the planning board to submit new information. Next slide. This is our staff recommendation. Most of them, the 6 out of 12 focus asking the applicant to work with Public Works to address circulation and traffic concerns. And these are the first 5, the next ones. Also the same thing, focusing on areas of segments of intersections that may not be conducive to the population that is now being introduced at this part of the development. 2,000 students, the busing, the 2 parking lots, getting in and out in the morning, dropping up and picking up students. So this is a cost of what we were able to filter into the recommendation from those comments. This concludes staff presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions. If I cannot, the applicant will be able to, and so is DPI and Public Works. Thank you. And of course, the request is to transmit the recommendations to the applicant as a pleasure of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hussey. I appreciate that. Commissioners, questions for staff before we hear from the applicant and the team?
Yeah, I have a couple of just brief questions, and you may not know the answers to these, so that you can defer this to the applicant if not. But one of them is that this is, I know, close to the Beltway in terms of the site location. There is a kind of a desert of bike share connections between Greenbelt and south of there. And I was wondering if there's going to be any attempt to put like a bike share station there. I saw that there's a bike rack, one of the inverted U's. It wasn't clear how many bike spaces are going to be there. But bike shares would also be a really nice addition, particularly since this goes up to 8th grade. One of the new schools that was just built is Greenbelt, or is Hyattsville Middle, and they've got a bike share right next to there, and it's pretty popular for kids to grab and for other people kind of coming and going. So having that right there would be great, because then we're going to start filling in the gaps where we have between like literally where I'm at and up by Greenbelt, because I can't go on to Greenbelt on bike shares. I can do it on my own bike on trails, and there are plenty of trails to get up there, but it'd be really nice to have that additional accessibility. So do you know if there's any plans for a bike share?
Transportation, I'm sure they're participating. They reviewed the traffic study that was provided. I don't think we looked at the connection of the bike share that exists to be able to link to the site, but I will see if, Evan, are you participating?
Hey, Christine. This is Evan Tenenbaum with the Transportation Planning Section. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, so we can look into that further. In the initial review, that wasn't something that we looked at, but we can look into that further as to providing bike shares with the school systems.
Okay, that'd be great. There's the county also has a number of stations that is going to be delivering over the next like 2 years or so. They're working with our Parks and Recs folks, and they're trying to find destinations to and places that are connections from and to. Destinations being like our parks that people might want to go to, but also throughways with schools and other places around there. So it'd probably be good. I can give you, if you ping me afterwards, I can give you the contact person of the county, and then the people in our Parks and Recreation Department who are doing that if you don't already have them. The other question, Mrs. Say, that I had is around the playground. So when I was looking at that slide that you had that kind of illustrated, I realized it's illustrative.
Can you go to that? I think a slide. Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see some of the facilities there because these are really small pictures, and realize these are just kind of examples. But is there going to be any communication board there? Because that's one of the things that we're putting in all of our parks now when we have playgrounds, is to have the assisted communications boards. And I'm thinking specifically just completely because of my daughter having challenges with communicating and this just opening up worlds right now over the past like 6 months when we go to playgrounds. She's close to attending public schools in the county. And if I were to take her to a playground like this, it limits her ability to potentially communicate if she wants to think about things. I'm also noticing that on the bottom right, the swings that you guys have down there, none of them are like ADH. You don't have like kind of the wider swing for somebody who might be in like a wheelchair, have limited mobility. So that would be a nice thing to be in there. And then just thinking about other ways that this can be more accessible and inclusive, particularly because this is supposed to be a public school. I think this should be one of the things we're really aiming for when we get kids outside, to have healthy kind of like exchanges and stuff.
Commissioner Dorner, what we did not get or we did not request for was the specifications. What actually goes in each one of the playground, and whether those reading boards were actually part of that or an illustration of the design. They told us that they were not there at that point, that they were working on those. Same as the signage for the school itself, the school structure sign. The consultant said they were still working on those. So this is not an area that we really got enough information on in terms of the design and what actually would go in each one of them. I was able to pull this from information that was shared with us just to make sure we know what's going to happen in this site when it comes to playground for the different grades. But in terms of the design specifically for the playgrounds, we did not have information on that from the applicants.
Okay. Yeah, I think just in general, we should always push back on all of the mandatory referrals.
Okay.
For the playground kind of stuff. When you have, particularly the communications boards are most important for elementary school children and middle school as they're kind of going up in the stages, because I can tell you the county services are nice, but they don't give kids assisted technology devices and actually work with them very well sometimes. So I've had challenges where I've had to go and just spend a bunch of money on my own to get some of these things so that way it can happen. And I think later on, those challenges are probably resolved a little bit better because kids have been in the system for longer and they kind of, the parents have figured it out. But particularly at the younger stages when kids may have gone undiagnosed or the parents may not be aware of some of the challenges that their students may face or their children may face, we should really be as inclusive as we can and always ask for these sorts of things when we see these referrals coming through.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it for me for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions for staff?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to associate myself with Commissioner Dorner's observations.
Thank you. As would I. Appreciate that. A couple quick questions. This may be for, broadly speaking, the applicant's team, but maybe Ms. Jose, you can answer this too. The new field that's being proposed there, do you know if there's anything in the plans that would have amplified sound associated with that in any way, shape, or form? And I'm just thinking of noise impact on the neighbors, which is, almost abutting the field.
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. Again, as I explained to Commissioner Dorner, the details of all the features on the site was not information that was submitted to us. The applicants seem to indicate that they are still in the phase of design. And so we really did not get specific of what goes in those ball fields. We didn't get specific of design illustration, like the entrance of the school, what does the sign look like? They're still in design. So this is what we're presenting to you is very general. And I'm not sure whether now that it's coming to you now to move to implementing to the permitting agencies, whether these are something we should look at. I'm not sure how. We'll get direction from the board on that. We only showed what we got on the site plan. There were not specific design elements for any one of them at all, telling us what goes actually with each one of them. And so we'll be able, so our staff can get into them to take each feature like the field and show you exactly on the screen what goes on it, or take the playground, show you this is the playground, these are the features on the playground, or show you the entry sign, this is what the entry sign looks like. What we're showing you is what we got from the applicant, from where they are from. That's the indication in terms of the design based on the 6 schools that are for them to look into. So those, what I have is generality, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And in terms of process, just educate me a bit too. At any point, are you aware of conversations that have been had with our Department of Parks and Recreation related to these facilities in any way, shape, or form?
We have not had, when Commissioner Dorner mentioned that there's a contact at Parks and Recreation, I'm like, no, we didn't. We don't have the contact with them on those elements, what goes on the playgrounds, which we had earlier. We would have brought them in.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. That's all the questions that I have.
Okay.
Other commissioners? No other questions? So let us turn to the applicant. Mr. O'Donnell, are you taking the lead on this, or Mr. Parker? Who do I turn to first here, if anyone?
Ms. Yep, do you want to
turn to me?
Handle?
Yeah, I'll take it. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. for the record, Majette Parker, Law Office of Majette S. Parker, offices in Camp Spring, Maryland. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Prince George's County Public School System, and the development team. I'm going to take the lead, but I'm going to turn over a lot of the technical questions over to our development team. We have with us today, we have a tremendous, best-in-class development team that have developed schools in this region that are just first in class. And you've heard just a moment ago, Jack Chen speak up. He's with the architectural firm of Perkins Eastman, along with Sean O'Donnell. They are both with Perkins Eastman. They have designed schools that are just first in class. And remember, one thing, we got to put this in context. The slide that was brought earlier, there's a need to get these schools delivered as soon as possible. As soon as possible. The school that's being replaced was built in 1968. Over 50 years ago, if my math is correct. So yes, we are moving as quickly as possible to not only remove these old buildings of the the schools that are going through the process, but putting in first-in-class facilities to really engage the young people, get them involved in a best type of place to be. And so, yes, we don't have all the information. We're working on them. We do appreciate all the input and all of the recommendations coming from your staff, and also hearing those today too about reaching out to Parks and Recreation and reaching out. We're putting up a bike share. These recommendations will be considered by our team within the budgetary constraints of the applicant, Prince George's County Public School System, but we are listening. The traffic concerns raised by Department of Permits, Inspection and Enforcement, DPI, and DPW&T. We have been in almost weekly meetings with those two agencies, going through all of their concerns and addressing them with a team of experts that include the traffic group. And we have with us here from the traffic group, Carl Wilson, who has done a number of studies and worked on a number of school projects throughout the area. We also have the civil engineering firm of DeLon Hampton. James Gittens is here for that. We have landscape architect Connie Fan with us. And let's see, did I cover everyone? Oh yes, and we have the design build team by MCN Build. Jonas Menge, as well as Rick Munford, are on the line as well. So we are moving quickly to meet the demands of the school system to bring first-in-class buildings and their associated site issues together to get this thing built. And you saw on this slide, I think it was slide 16, the delivery date of 2027. We know we have to go through, after we get the staff recommendations transmitted to us from the planning board. We've already been meeting with the primary governmental review agency for permits, and we're working through all of those recommendations that will be transmitted to us, hopefully today, by your action of approving the transmittal of the recommendations to the applicant. We can continue on with those comments. But at this point, I would like to turn it over to our lead design team, and that would be Jack Chin and Sean O'Donnell, to address some of those specific concerns being raised in the staff report regarding the features that the school, this new school built in 2027, will bring to the students and their parents, the families of Prince George's County. Thank you. Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Chin or Mr. O'Donnell. Mr. Chin, start with you.
I can start, and then Jack can jump in and compliment what I did.
And Ken bring up the slide 12, if he's talking about the playgrounds.
All right, Mr. O'Donnell, take it away.
Sure, and our landscape architect team is also here today. But first, let me just say that we're very excited to be here with you today, sharing this exciting prospect of constructing a sustainable high-performance learning environment for the community. So we're really excited to be sharing this information with you this afternoon. With respect to the many of the questions that you're asking about, again, as was noted, we are sort of midstream in the design process on a fast track schedule. And many of these issues, that are being raised are things that are ahead of us in the design process. So, we'll be digging into many of these details, but let me assure everybody that our intention with the design of the playgrounds is to make them available to everybody. And we certainly support, everything that was stated about accessibility, throughout the campus for, again, everybody to have the opportunity to avail themselves. The details on the communications board, I would leave that to our landscape architect, but if I'm understanding what the request is, it sounds like an interesting opportunity for us to explore and to integrate into the design. With respect to swings, there are actually no swings planned for the site. They are no longer approved for safety concerns on the site. So there won't be swings within the playgrounds. The playgrounds will be developed in great detail in the next stage of design, and we're certainly glad to embrace many of the comments that have been talked about. Same with the sound system and other signage on the site. That will also be developing in subsequent phases of work as we continue to push the project forward. With that, Connie, do you have any other comments on the playground and landscape issues?
Thanks, Sean. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, good. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here. I'm a certified playground designer, so accessibility and also picking structures specific to age, appropriate for age group is high on our agenda when it comes to school playground design. So like Sean said, the specific required signage and the PIP, put in place rubber surfacing, for the specific purpose of allowing wheelchair accessibility to the play equipment, will be developed in the next phase of the project. I do want to point out that between the two age group playgrounds, the one for the smaller kid is themed differently than the bigger kid. The plan doesn't really illustrate that, but the smaller kid is a nature themed playground, which is very popular these days, less so about the platform and the colorfulness, but really look at using plants and take advantage of a natural topography change. Unfortunately, we do have a little bit topography to play with, so the smaller kids will have an earlier education that's more nature themed. With regard to the other comment here about the main signage, we did receive a copy of the existing signs recently built as part of the Phase 1 blueprint schools, and our new sign will be similar to that in terms of scale, in terms of materiality, and but with the exception of the signage board. Other than that, be happy to include those in the next iteration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Circling back to some of the other comments, for our traffic concerns, I would ask Carl Wilson to address any of those comments as well.
Sure. With regard to traffic, the development team has been working with DPI and DPW&T to address the concerns, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the process. Most notably, along site frontage, there are improvements proposed to enhance the circulation to Good Luck Road.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Jose.
To best illustrate traffic as they're discussing, Ken, can you bring the image, the other one for circulation, please? Outside the PowerPoint, the other one.
I think it's that extra slide. All right, that's right.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Jose.
Sorry.
Mr. Wilson.
Sure. So, alongside frontage along Good Luck Road, there is proposed restriping to better accommodate vehicle access for the site. And that restriping is going to involve providing a deceleration lane, a right turn lane along the entire site frontage, and then also a two-way left turn lane in the center of the roadway, all within that existing pavement section that's out there. So the intent of that is to basically minimize the impact of the through traffic on Good Luck Road while the site is ingressing and egressing during the morning arrival and afternoon dismissal. In conjunction with everything else, instead of physical improvements at off-site intersections, we're working with the school and with DPI and DPW&T in an attempt to look at different ways that the school could be accessed with that potential existing access to 85th Avenue being maintained. So as you can see in the bottom of the page there, that's how the existing school is accessed through 85th Avenue. So it might be possible for that to remain as a viable access. Something else that we've looked at is, since this is going to be a K through 8 school, it's going to serve basically 2 different student populations, and the ability to possibly stagger the arrival and dismissal times for those 2 different components, for the elementary component and for the middle school component, is something we're looking at as well in order to minimize the impact to the surrounding intersections. In addition, there's other, again, transportation management plan ideas that we're working on, with staff to try to eliminate the need for off-site improvements. The reality is the students that will be attending this school are likely attending school at other locations today. So they're probably likely on the road network. So the findings in the TIS are very conservative in nature in that respect. And that's part of the issues that we're working through at this time.
Thank you. I'm thinking through the order of this. I think we have representatives from DPW&T, our Department of Public Works and Transportation, and our Department of Permitting, Inspections, Enforcement, DPI, are here. Do we have representatives here? And if so, can you either turn your cameras on or speak?
Mr. Chairman, yes. This is Renee Lauda-Tivor, representing DPI.
Right. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Jahid Russell, Department of Public Works.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking is because there are lots of issues are coming up. We're talking about you a lot. And so it may be helpful to have you all insert yourself in the process before we go a whole lot farther, because then the folks from Perkins Eastman or our staff can actually respond to any questions or concerns that you have related to the recommendations that we have. So I don't know if you're prepared to present in any way, shape, or form, or if you just have some brief comments that you want to bring to us. But let me turn to you. I'll start with DPI, and then we'll go to DPW&T.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, and Ms. Osei, thanks for introducing us and having us speak on behalf of the department. Mr. Chairman, we sent our comments related to traffic. We typically get a referral from staff from the commission. We review it and voice our concerns. Typically in mandatory referrals, we've gone through this several times. We kind of work through this with the applicant. In this situation, we provided our comments and our concerns related to traffic on the study intersections and the access fronting Good Luck Road. And then we provided our recommendation on what we believe could possibly work for the applicant to consider. As Ms. Osei stated, we've met several times with the applicant, going through various iterations, provided our recommendations. One of the major recommendations that DPI recommends is the transportation management plan. That's what we believe could possibly help mitigate some of our concerns at the access and at the off-site access. The applicant proposed certain mitigations as well. Mr. Wilson stated that, which was the axle lane and then some pavement marking striping on Good Luck Road, which would help tremendously, and we are in support of that as well. So those are our concerns. We will continue to work with the applicant to draft the transportation management plan, and we'll provide any suggestions we have as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And the representative from DPW&T.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would not extend on the process. Mr. Laudertiver explained it quite well. In addition to what he said, I'll add a couple things. In terms of in addition to the TMP, suggests looking at the signal warrant for Good Luck Road and Cathedral Avenue, which would not just be helpful for vehicular operation, would also be a safe place for student crossing the road during both regular arrival dismissal period and also other time of the day. And the one was the 85th Avenue. I think it'd be a concern for if it's a full or major access for the school, it could be an issue because of it's a narrow road, even though it's an existing school is only not even 300 students. So I would discourage that, heavily relying on that. But the TMP and the Good Luck Road improvement, that would be very helpful for both operation and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you both taking the time and weighing in. Just to say, I have a question for you. So is the transportation management, is the TMP, is that part of your recommendations that are coming to us?
Yes, Ken, can you go back to the recommendations? Let me just, that's listed as recommendation 9 on the staff report and presentation. I think Katina was speaking.
Good. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes. Ken, if you can go to recommendations so we can have it on the screen. Yes. Recommendation 9 is a transportation management.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we've heard from DPI, we've heard from DPW&T. Commissioners, I'm inclined to go back to Mr. Wilson, have the applicant continue unless you have specific questions for DPI or DPW&T at this point. You okay? Okay. So back to you. We were with Mr. Wilson. Anything else that you have to bring to us?
No, I have nothing else to add. I just want to thank DPI and DPW&T for their support through the process, because we are certainly working with them, and ultimately the safe and efficient access for the site is everybody's goal here.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell, back to you.
Trying to remember if there were other questions that we haven't answered.
Sean, I do have one comment, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This is Jack Chin with Perkins Eastman. There's one clarification that I'd like to put on record. In the presentation in the staff report, it stated a gross square foot or area of the building that is not correct. So I want to provide that to you guys because we felt like that was important. I think the number previous was 89,000 and change, right? The gross square foot of the building is actually 227,568. And that is represented in the drawings.
Okay, I can have that.
Sure.
All the information I have is what I got from the applicant.
I understand it was likely a miscommunication.
So if anything has changed, it could have changed over the time that we've been working since we received the information. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chin. Anything else from the applicant? Mr. O'Donnell, Mr. Chin, Mr. Parker, anything else that you want to bring to us?
Just want to thank, I think we're complete. I just want to thank Christina Osai, as well as all the members in the special projects department, all the way from Bobby Ray, Katina Scholler. They have worked with us continually, not only on this particular application, but the other applications are well. You've heard one already before, that was Templeton Elementary School. You have this one this week, and next week we'll be back with you for Margaret Brent Elementary School. But if it were not for the close communications that we're maintaining, we would not be here today presenting this case to you today. We just want to thank Christine, Bobby Ray, Katina Scholler, as also Mr. James Hunt, who helped us get the application numbers we needed to be sequential at the very beginning. So it's a group effort. And by the way, we're not ending right here. We will stay in communication. One thing that Christine Osei gave to us was the ability to, within the next 30 days, we're going to supplement what is in the record by submitting our revisions to the traffic issues, more information on the playground. We're going to continue to supplement your staff. So we're working together. The main thing is that we're looking at a deadline to deliver this project by the summer of 2027, because our students need this. And again, I can't thank staff enough. Thank you so much for the action today. We anticipate that is the taking staff recommendation and approving to transmit it to the applicant today, pursuant to the requirements of the mandatory referral process. And with that, I think I can close on behalf of the applicant. Thank you.
Mr. Parker, much appreciated. Ms. Scholler, is there anything you want to add, by the way, since you are here?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Katina Schollers with Countywide Planning. I do want to thank, of course, Christine, recognize Christine and Bobby for their involvement in this. I want to thank Renee and Jahid from DPI and DPW&T for coming out. We hope to see you next week on the next school case as well. But I really do appreciate you guys making time for us all to coordinate together with the applicant to make this happen. And I want to thank Mr. Majette Parker. You know, we all connected very early to talk about these schools in this case. And I'm just thanking you very much coming prepared to talk about the transportation issues. It's very important with schools. So I just appreciate the coordinated effort on this all together. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Scholler.
Mr. Chairman, I also like to echo our transportation planning section.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
They have been a labor in the trench because—
And that would be Mr. Evanson and Bond.
Exactly. Yes. So at Crystal, Evan, we have been, it's ropes tied together that we go back and forth to them to get direction exactly what we should refine our recommendations to be, and to get DPI and Public Works to be here. So that is the connection and teamwork that has really come into this. I just want to echo what Katina was saying.
It's great to hear how collaborative you all are, both internally, but with the other agencies as well. It's really positive to hear, so I appreciate it. Okay, well, thank you all. Commissioners, and maybe David, Mr. Warner, you can help me with this too. We have before us the staff recommendations, which they're recommending that we transmit to the applicant. But there's a few other things that we've brought up here as well. I'm trying to figure out how that gets integrated in so that becomes a part of our recommendations as well. And to do that in a way that does not slow down this process.
Right, David Warner, Principal Counsel. Yeah, the additional considerations that that the commissioners have brought up and that you'd want to include in your recommendation, it's not possible to literally write those down now and include them. You could adopt your motion, containing your recommendations, and then ask staff to summarize the additional comments from the commissioners into the recommendation that they send to the applicant. And that would be sufficient in this case. This is not, evidentiary hearing. So I think that'd be appropriate.
Okay, commissioners, any concerns about that process?
No, no, not at all. I just had a comment when the time is appropriate.
No, go ahead now, please.
Well, since it's clear that this is the Mutual Admiration Society amongst all involved today, I just cannot go without saying, I absolutely love, and I know that there's still a lot of work to be done, but in terms of the design of the building, I love the indoor spaces with all the windows, the light coming in. I mean, because that is so important and critical to have for young people and their learning, the outdoor classrooms. So just really great job. And I look forward to seeing more at the appropriate time. So.
Absolutely. I would associate myself with those remarks for sure. Okay, if there's nothing else before us, no other comments or questions from the applicant, from staff, commissioners, what is your pleasure on this mandatory referral?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the evaluation and analysis of staff to include the technical correction as read into the record by Mr. Chen and approve the recommendations as detailed in staff's report to include requesting staff to ensure that the comments made by my colleagues with regard to considering bike shares, communication boards for playground ADA being accessible and inclusive, and transmit to Sean Matlock, Director Capital Programs, Prince George's County Public Schools.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Washington, a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any other questions or comments? Any discussion? Seeing none, I will. Yes, Commissioner Dorner.
I'll second the comments that Commissioner Washington had made. And then one of the other things that really struck me, I mean, this is a really nice design, and a lot of the new school designs have just been fantastic looking. And I like how we're modernizing the schools. Because where my son goes, they can't even drink the water in the schools. It's that bad. They have lots of plastic bottles, and the kids drink like halfway through the plastic bottles, and then they just throw them away. And it just kills me to see that happening. There's no reason in the world why we should have schools where kids cannot have access to fresh water. And we're wasting away plastic bottles. So seeing the renovations coming through and the new school designs is awesome to know that it's happening and happening very quickly. I certainly want to be supportive of that. One of the things that I particularly liked in the slides, Mr. Parker, is that you've got the native landscaping in there, which is something that I think is great. I know that the pictures are just kind of illustrative there, but you could even have like native plants and flowers that would support science classes for kids if they wanted to raise butterflies or caterpillars or different kinds of insects and learn about natural predators that they can use to eat aphids and other stuff like that. That would be just really fantastic in some of your schools to incorporate sort of the natural environment with the kids right there and bring it into the classroom so they learn about what's native to Maryland and how they can take care of the places around there and build a nice environment. So I just leave that as another kind of thought for you to take back to your clients.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. And if the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion has no objection, we'll consider that a friendly amendment to the commissioner comments that we would like included in the staff report for the recommendations for the referral.
No problem at all.
Okay, we're good to go. If there's no further discussion, I will call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
I vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Giraldo.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 5-0. Thank you all very much for your participation in this process. I think we've got an excellent product, and as Mr. Parker said, one that needs to move as quickly as possible. So we're on board with that. And I believe that concludes all the items for today's agenda. Mr. Hunt or Ms. Connor, any further business before us today?
Chairman, there are no additional business items before the board today.
Okay, then commissioners, without objection, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.